Chapter 805. Since you're so stubborn, I'll cripple your sword arts first. Amidst the endless flames, the area within a range of several 100,000 meters was encompassed by the great radiant world's flames. As the great radiant world pressed down, layers of stacking strong gales came pressing down, causing the space to distort incessantly and sending out waves of ripples. The pressure above Feng Xingjian's head was so immense that it was speechless. Feng Xingjian seemed to have suddenly reacted, drew his sword, and slashed out at the great radiant world in the sky. However, the great radiant world's collision seemed to be too ferocious. The streams of sword light that Feng Xingjian shot out were extinguished like many candles. Under the confident gaze of the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch, they were completely suppressed by the light screen in the sky above the capital. Above his head was the boundless city of flames, and below his feet was the light screen of the formation that encompassed the entire city. It pressed down on Feng Xingjian and the celestial eradication sword formation from both top and bottom. It was as if the entire world had turned into a huge millstone, suppressing Feng Xingjian completely. Streams of flames and light surrounded him, making it hard for Feng Xingjian to move like an insect trapped in amber. Right now, the combined powers of the great radiant world and the capital formation had indeed surpassed the powers of Feng Xingjian and the celestial eradication sword formation. In a head-on confrontation, Feng Xingjian was no longer a match for them. After all, it was the heavenly and earthly treasures that the Sacred Fire Order had spent countless years plundering the desert, as well as the accumulation of faith over countless years. The powers they contained were hard to calculate, and even the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch was unable to unleash them completely. Before this power, even the heavens will collapse and the earth will tear apart. Even Alexander, or those guardian kings from the church, can forget about defeating me here. With absolute confidence, the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch stepped in a void space and slowly appeared before the suppressed Feng Xingjian. Looking at how Feng Xingjian kept on struggling but was unable to move, the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch shook his head and said with a smile, "Feng Xingjian, do you know that right now? You look like a rat caught in a trap? It's really ugly." Following Feng Xingjian's actions, everyone in the city cheered in unison. "Burn him! I'll make this heretic regret this day forever. Long live the holy flame." Looking at the cheers around them, the faces of the Imperial Intelligence team were gloomy. One of the new girls could not help but ask through the information currents, "Leader, can you think of a way to save Feng Xingjian?" The captain shook his head and sighed. "What can we do to save him? This is the Sand Country's headquarters. You've seen it for yourself. Even if Feng Xingjian killed the erupting Sand King with a single strike, he was still unable to put up any resistance before the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch. This is the power of a Tier 5 divine level expert. It's also the reason why the Sand Country has the confidence to stand tall in this world and what they can rely on to go up against our empire. To him, we are no different from dust. Right now, the only thing we can do is to widen our eyes and watch the entire process of Feng Xingjian's death. We must record this information down firmly. This is the only thing we can do." Everyone lowered their heads helplessly. Although it was a pity that Feng Xingjian had fallen here, they knew that the captain was right. Right now, the only thing they could do was to record this information down. The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch looked at Feng Xingjian and continued, "Why? Are you still going to struggle? If you still don't give up, I won't continue to be so polite." "Struggle?" Feng Xingjian, who was being suppressed by the great radiant world in the sky and the formation protective barrier on the ground, suddenly looked toward the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch. His expression was extremely cold, as if the person being suppressed was not him. "I'm just curious. Do you really have a misconception that you're suppressing me now?" "Misconception?" The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch's expression was stunned. Then he felt his vision blur. The person being suppressed was not Feng Xingjian, but the Fifth Prince. Right now, the Fifth Prince was being suppressed by the two tremendous forces and had already turned into light spots, leaving only a phantom image that was about to dissipate. The fifth prince in the phantom image was filled with fury, despair, and regret. He glared at the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch like he was saying, "Why did you kill me?" However, in the end, he was still crushed into a series of light spots, completely dissipating into the air. This prince of the Krieg royal family, an expert who had the world's best fist arts talent, and was also an expert who contained countless secrets, had finally died completely. At the sight of this scene, the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch was infuriated. "What have you done? What have I done?" A soft voice rang out in the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch's ears. "Are you sure that you didn't do something?" The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch turned to take a look. Fang Xingjian had unknowingly appeared next to him. He let out an enraged bellow and punched out. Accompanied by streams of meteor flames, Fang Xingjian's figure instantly dissipated. Illusory arts. These are all illusory arts. Illusory arts. In the capital, Fang Xingjian, who was dressed in white robes and riding on a camel, raised his head and met the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch's gaze. "Are you sure?" "Umph." The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch raised his hands, and the great radiant world trembled fiercely. Endless firepower gathered, forming a vortex that was formed from streams of flames. At the center of the flame vortex, a huge black egg descended slowly. Just one look at it would be enough to sense the terrifying, destructive prowess it contained. This was the Sacred Fire Order's secret martial technique. The Egg of World Creation was a supreme martial technique that simulated and calculated the state before the world was created, condensing endless firepower. In the capital, many warriors, merchants, slaves, and maids raised their heads. All of them revealed Fang Xingjian's face and said in Fang Xingjian's voice, "Are you sure that it's me this time around?" The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch's eyes widened abruptly, and his martial will swept out wildly. However, he was unable to sense any changes between the countless Fang Xingjians. More and more people in the capital lifted their heads. All of them were Fang Xingjians. At this moment, everyone in the entire city seemed to have turned into Fang Xingjian's appearance. They looked at the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch and revealed an inexplicable smile, causing the patriarch's hair to stand on end. Then all of the Fang Xingjians asked in unison, "Are you really going to kill me?" The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch's hand started trembling. The Egg of World Creation in the sky was as heavy as Mount Tai, yet could not descend no matter what. Right now, when Fang Xingjian first unleashed a myriad of sword light toward the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch, his conjured physique had already turned into countless rays of light encompassing the world along with the myriad of sword light. His body seemed to be formed from countless photons, scattering out in the space within a range of 100,000 meters. He seemed to have become waves, yet he also seemed to have become particles. This was a state that was at a higher level than the light pursuit sword technique's light body. When he existed in such a state, he immediately sensed that the world was different. Chapter 806. This was the result of Fang Xingjian's compulsory cultivation after staying in Charlot's body during this period of time. Fang Xingjian's application of the light pursuit sword had improved, and he had a deeper understanding of the profoundness of electromagnetic forces, gravity, and strong interaction. He had taken another step forward on the path of microscopic control and was able to trigger the illusory powers of the celestial eradication sword formation. He was no longer purely attacking and killing his opponents in the microscopic world. Instead, he was changing the magnitude and direction of the three types of forces to change the macroscopic world, creating all sorts of marvelous effects. However, Fang Xingjian had not been able to unleash this power very well. However, when the restraints on Fang Xingjian were removed by the Purple Mage King, his grasp over his senses and emotions, as well as the illusory arts caused by them, immediately broke through the limits. Human senses, knights' senses, divine-level expert senses, and even their emotions. The foundation is non-physical contact, the collisions of waves, and the reflection of light rays. To sum it up, They are electromagnetic waves. Grasping electromagnetic waves means grasping the human heart. At this moment, Feng Xingjian's sword arts were no longer purely attacking the microscopic world with his powers. Instead, he was using his own powers to stir up storms and waves in the microscopic world, creating all sorts of unbelievable phenomena. Feng Xingjian's entire body spread out within the range of the celestial eradication sword formation, and the entire world seemed to have turned into countless waves and particles. Neither the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch nor the people from the Sand Country seemed to care about him. When the Purple Mage King removed the restraints on him, and when he performed the Light Pursuit sword technique's cultivation results for the first time, he seemed to be able to observe many things in the microscopic world that he had not been able to see in the past. The Light Pursuit sword technique seemed to have undergone a mutation due to the changes in his emotions. Many scenes of light and shadows appeared before him. Some of them were very familiar, while others were very foreign to him. As Feng Xingjian continued to use his powers to change the various waves and particles in the microscopic world, the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch, who was in the macroscopic world, also saw many drastic changes. Divine-level experts tended to sense the world through their martial will. Through reading the information in the ether particles, they could obtain information such as height, length, speed, temperature, brightness, and so on. They would then regroup the information in their minds, as if they were using their martial will to see it. However, the essence of his martial will was still electromagnetic waves, and what he read was still various light waves, radiation, and electromagnetic waves. Therefore, when Feng Xingjian's sword intent entered the microscopic world, it did not just destroy with brute force. Instead, it started to strengthen, weaken, and change electromagnetic waves. After the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch received all sorts of information that Feng Xingjian had changed, he was able to create all sorts of illusions. As for the human body's sense of sight, hearing, and touch, they couldn't escape either. In fact, they were even easier to fake. What you want to see is what I want you to see. What you want to hear is what I want you to hear. Together with Feng Xingjian, the celestial eradication sword formation turned into an invisible force that spread out within a radius of 100,000 meters. In the vision of the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch, not only did the people in the entire city turn into Feng Xingjian, but even the back of his own hand also had Feng Xingjian's face. Are you going to kill me? Another face darted out from the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch's chest. Are you going to kill me? The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch struck out with his palm, smashing the face on his chest into smithereens. However, his body was also injured, and light fragments shot out in all directions. Illusions. These are all illusions. The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch's gaze narrowed. Not only did the attack on his chest make him feel pain, but it also allowed him to calm down once again. His expression also became extremely solemn. To think that you can directly tamper with the information that my marshal will has obtained. But illusions are illusions. I'll just recreate the information of the environment. Streams of sparks extended out from his body, and an endless amount of heat energy gathered in the air. They kept on forming many temperature zones that extended out in all directions from his body. The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch was exploring the entire world through artificially changing the heat radiation. Even the entire great radiant world trembled under his control, sending streams of sparks scattering down and forming many different temperature zones. As these temperature zones were formed, many different substances that were subjected to heat were once again constructed in his mind, causing the surrounding scenes to appear in his mind once again. The Feng Xingjian on his body completely disappeared, and everyone on the ground returned to normal. All the illusions disappeared in an instant. I see you. Amidst the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch's detection, Feng Xingjian, who was in the sky about 1 kilometer away from him, was looking at him in astonishment. It was as if Feng Xingjian had not expected that his illusory arts had been broken through. A furious will seethe it. With a single thought from the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch, the seething flames in the surroundings surrounded Feng Xingjian in layers. At the next moment, The egg of world creation above his head broke through the air and struck out toward where Feng Xingjian was at. It was as if the world had opened up once again and the universe had exploded. As the egg of world creation collided, endless white light burst out, and a high temperature of over 10 million degrees vaporized everything where Feng Xingjian was at. All the physical matter in the world seemed to have disappeared at this moment, leaving behind only heat energy. Even if he doesn't die from this attack, he will be seriously injured. The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch let out a cold laugh and once again probed where Feng Xingjian was at. However, at the next moment, another soft voice rang out next to his ear. "Where are you looking?" "What?" The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch turned his head abruptly and saw that Feng Xingjian was standing behind him, and scathed. Feng Xingjian was looking curiously at the spot where the egg of world creation had exploded earlier. The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch said in disbelief, "Was that an illusion earlier?" Feng Xingjian's palm slapped gently onto the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch's shoulder and said, "When did you think that you've broken through my illusory arts?" The explosions in the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch's martial will slowly dissipated, and the Heavenly Dance Monarch's remnant martial will was revealed. She only left behind an extremely unwilling expression before completely dissipating into the world. The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch's face contorted, revealing an extremely enraged expression. Flames seethed above the great radiant world, as if several tens or over 100 volcanoes were about to erupt. However, he still did not make a move. Or rather, he did not dare to make a move at all. He was afraid that if he were to make another move, he would destroy the entire desert capital. Are illusory arts at the microscopic realm so terrifying to such an extent? The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch revealed an unwilling expression. Although he had yet to reach the microscopic realm, it was recorded in the Sacred Fire Order's manuals. Of course, he also knew that the fundamental goal of advancing from Tier 1 to 5 of the divine level was to step into the microscopic realm. Only by stepping into the microscopic realm would one have a chance of continuing to attain breakthroughs. Looking at the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch who had stopped his attacks, Feng Xingjian said calmly, "You're not going to make a move anymore? But are you sure that you really didn't make a move?" Chapter 807. What? The eyelids of the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch twitched fiercely. He lifted his head and saw that the entire city had turned into ruins. Several 100,000 citizens of the Sand Country had been turned into charcoal, and even the entire great radiant world had fallen onto the capital. The two cities, Flames and Matter, encompassed each other, completely vaporizing all the living creatures inside and outside the city. I clearly didn't make a move. Feng Xingjian looked at the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch and said, "Is that true? Are you sure that your senses toward your body, your own powers, and the great radiant world are all real?" "I'm sure." The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch's tone was extremely certain. He looked at Feng Xingjian and said, "They're all illusions. I didn't make a move, and the city wasn't destroyed either. It's because I can still sense the existence of the formation. Even at the microscopic realm, it's impossible for me to directly tamper with the powers grasped by others. Therefore, what I saw were all illusions. As long as we're in this city, it's impossible for you to kill me. As long as I don't make a move, there's nothing you can do," the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch said as he looked coldly at Feng Xingjian. "Are you able to keep up with this illusory art? To be able to use your powers on the microscopic world and keep on performing the microscopic realm? The energy depletion isn't something that can be easily achieved. Are you really not going to make a move?" Feng Xingjian looked at the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch and smiled. Simultaneously, a spot of sword light lit up on his fingertip. It was like a star that was shrinking in the universe, emitting streams of light that pierced through the sky. The eyelids of the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch twitched, and his palms opened up before clenching tightly again. He said coldly, "Don't even think of lying to me. I won't make a move. Who is this? My great priest? My disciple? Or the Sand Country's princess?" Feng Xingjian did not reply. He merely tapped out with a finger, and the sword light on his fingertips scattered out. It was like a meteor shower, scattering across the entire capital. These sword lights were all formed from infiltrating void sword intents. They moved across space and did not care about the protection of the formation at all. They pierced through the city and landed on everyone's bodies like illusions. Is it okay to watch me attack your people? At the sight of this scene, the eyes of the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch narrowed slightly. He kept on glancing between the people in the city and Feng Xingjian, but he did not make a move. However, the hesitation in his gaze grew increasingly stronger. The sword light dissipated, and Feng Xingjian threw an indifferent glance toward the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch. I'll leave your life here for now. The next time I come, I will take it away. The words Feng Xingjian had left behind kept ringing out in his mind, and the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch's countenance turned extremely grim. He looked abruptly in the direction of the city, only to see that the entire city was in a state of chaos. Countless people were crying out, and there were furious bellows, agonizing cries, and cries of despair everywhere. Under the gazes of the several million people in the city, the entire battle process was extremely simple. Countless piercing sword light lit up on Feng Xingjian's fingertips, and the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch stood there like a fool. This sword attack is to punish you for your crime of disrespect. If you do this again, I'll definitely bathe the entire Sand Country in blood. Then the sword light pierced through the air and sank into the bodies of the several million people in the city. Each of the Sand Country's people who were pierced through by the sword light discovered that their lives were not in danger at the start. However, they then let out agonizing cries. It was because the several million people in the desert had all discovered that their systems had disappeared. The knight's systems of several million people had vanished without a trace. When a knight reached the divine level, they basically did not need to rely on their system's cultivation anymore. They completely relied on their comprehension of the world, the control of their powers, the cultivation of manuals and secret arts, and their progress in the nine-tiered heavens. However, regardless of whether it was second transition experts' skill synthesis, first transition experts' job transitions, conversion of potential apprentices' job transitions, or nurturing and training techniques, all of them required the existence of systems. Without the assistance of systems, almost all experts below the divine level had lost the ability to cultivate and become stronger. To the Sand Country's upper echelon, aristocrats, commoners, soldiers, and even slaves, what did it mean for them to lose the possibility to cultivate? It was an ending that was worse than hell. Countless people knelt on the ground, staring blankly at their own hands. They could no longer feel their attributes, skills, or even the existence of the system. This was the first time they had ever felt that they were so unfamiliar with their physical bodies. God, have you given up on your people? Lord Patriarch, we can't cultivate anymore. Techniques, attributes. We can't sense anything. Therefore, some people started to kowtow in Feng Xingjian's direction. Some people even prostrated themselves on the ground, wearing expressions of regret. Tears and snot covered their faces. Many of them even treated Feng Xingjian, who was in the sky, as a god. To think that he can take away our cultivation foundation. Could he be a god? To them, being able to take away their systems was an unprecedented miracle. Everyone in Miracle World was born with systems, and they were like a part of their bodies, existing only in their will and thoughts. Even divine-level experts had not been able to sever their systems. Faced with such a situation, it was understandable for them to treat Feng Xingjian as a god. My lord, please spare us. God, please forgive us for our sins and ignorance. I'm willing to offer up all of my wealth, all of my women, and all of my slaves. Please bestow me with the right to cultivate once again. After this sword attack, he left behind a city of terror. Feng Xingjian threw a cold glance toward the city under his feet. Then with a flash, he disappeared completely, leaving behind the people in the city who had sunk into chaos and breakdown. Looking at Feng Xingjian, who had disappeared into the sky, the Empire's intelligence team wore expressions of great astonishment and despair. It was because Fang Xingjian's earlier sword attack had been indiscriminate. After all, there were several million people in the city. How could Fang Xingjian possibly differentiate between them when he had instantly attacked with his sword? This meant that their group systems had also been cut off. The team leader looked in the direction of the sky, and the corners of his lips curled up into a bitter smile. To think that he was able to slash off their cultivation foundation with a single sword attack. This person's sword arts are really amazing. Another young lady who had just arrived said, he barged into the Sand Country alone with his sword. Not only did he kill the erupting Sand King, but he also forced the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch to slash off the cultivation foundation of the entire country's upper echelon right before the patriarch. It's really, no one could think of any words to describe the impression that Fang Xingjian had left in their hearts. They only knew that with Fang Xingjian's attack this time around, an unprecedented storm would be stirred up across the entire desert. All the upper echelon below the divine level had lost their cultivation foundation. With that, how many aristocrats, prestigious clans, generals, and factions would be reshuffled? However, no matter what the outcome was, Fang Xingjian would become the entire desert's nightmare. In the sky, the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch continued to stand stiffly on the spot, his eyes filled with shock and doubt. Cutting off the system was something so unbelievable that he could not be sure if what he had seen was an illusion or reality. Chapter 808. Fang Xingjian left the Sand Country directly. It was naturally because time was tight for him, and he did not have that much free time to waste on the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch. The evil god ritual in the imperial capital was still ongoing, and the first prince was still on the run. Alexander, the fifth prince, and true Lord Qingshan, who had surrounded him earlier, had all been killed by him. Only the first prince was still on the run. However, most of the first prince's powers had been crushed by Fang Xingjian in the northern ice region. He was only left with less than 5% of his powers to flee. Earlier, Fang Xingjian's sudden inspiration had suddenly lost all senses of the first prince. With a flash, he arrived in the sky above the imperial capital. Fang Xingjian understood that the first prince must have left this world to be able to make him lose his senses from his sudden inspiration. And the greatest possibility of him leaving the world was that he had come to the evil god ritual. Looking at the imperial capital, which was encompassed by purple light pillars, Fang Xingjian's eyes narrowed slightly. I've finally come here. However, at the next moment, he suddenly fell into a daze. ****. Your mother is really shameless. Everyone beat him to death. In the bottomless green forest, more than 10 children surrounded another child and cursed angrily. Their expressions were twisted, and there was a cruel and innocent smile on their faces. From time to time, they would throw stones and hit the other child until his head was covered in blood. The scene before him appeared and then disappeared instantly. Fang Xingjian was stunned for a moment. That's me? But why don't I remember such a thing happening in the past? In his memories, he had merely attended an ordinary school, and the classmates around him were all very ordinary as well. Everyone went to school normally, took exams normally, and graduated normally. There had not even been a single special accident, let alone something like this. Shaking his head, Fang Xingjian thought, what on earth did that purple mage king do to me? It seems that not only have my emotions returned, but something else has also returned as well. But now isn't the time to be thinking about these things. At the thought of this, Fang Xingjian took a step forward and headed toward the evil god ritual. Before Fang Xingjian entered the ritual, the first prince had already escaped into the evil god ritual. His entire body was illusory like a ghost, appearing and disappearing from time to time. Clearly, because his power was too unstable, there was something wrong with his existence. At this moment, the eldest prince could be said to have never been in such a dangerous situation in his life. Almost as soon as he stepped into the ceremony, he shuttled through the alleys and approached the center of the imperial capital at an extremely fast speed. Since Fang Xingjian has defeated me, it means that the ambush has failed. At the thought of this, the first prince's eyes were filled with an intense unwillingness to accept this outcome. However, Although he was unwilling, he knew that it was no longer possible for him to rely on his own powers to defeat Feng Xingjian. Feng Xingjian has the sudden inspiration ability. No matter where I run to, I won't be able to escape from him. My only chance of survival is in this evil god ritual. This place is isolated from the world, and he won't be able to sense me for now. Moreover, the guardian kings of the Holy Sea of Truth and the four mage kings are all existences who can deal with Feng Xingjian. Only by borrowing their powers will I have a chance to seek revenge. At the thought of this, his speed increased. He was like a meteor phantom, instantly killing his way to the center of the imperial capital. Then his body moved up and down, changing his appearance so that others would not be able to recognize him. After all, he was a divine-level expert. Even though a large part of his powers had been destroyed by Feng Xingjian, his realm was still there. He could also move at akin to light speed. In the blink of an eye, he darted into the center of the imperial capital and was sent into the White Jade Square. Right now, the two guardian kings, death-revealing heavenly eyes and darkness aberration, were standing together in the White Jade Square. Streams of sword light flashed to and fro before them, but they were unable to break through death-revealing heavenly eyes' blockade. Sword light continued to move about at light speed, but wherever death-revealing heavenly eyes' vision passed by, everything in the world would be destroyed. Moreover, his vision could cover an area of 120 degrees. As long as he turned slightly, he would be able to see 360 degrees without any blind spots. Since he also had the ability to move at light speed, he had an advantage over Feng Xingjian. The sword light attacked consecutively several times, but death-revealing heavenly eyes managed to break through all of them. With each glance, a large part of the sword light would shatter, clearly suffering from serious injuries. Feng Xingjian was fighting against death-revealing heavenly eyes incessantly, but he was unable to gain the upper hand and was even being completely suppressed. As the ritual was independent of the world, Feng Xingjian was completely unaware of what was happening outside. Not far away, under the blood-colored vortex, the Gold Mage King continued to stand there with a smile, his eyes flashing with an unfathomable glow. As the first prince had changed his appearance, after he entered, people only took a glance at him and then paid him no more attention. It was because everyone's gazes and attention were focused on the two guardian kings and Feng Xingjian. In another direction, Charlot looked at the battle situation in the sky anxiously. Although his memories had been forged by the Chaos Witch and the Gold Mage King, the forged emotions were still emotions. Right now, he was naturally very worried about Feng Xingjian's safety. One of the Guardian Kings has already suppressed Teacher completely. If the other Guardian King were to make a move as well. At the thought of this, Charlot's countenance turned even grimmer. Although he had long known that the Guardian Kings from the Holy Sea of Truth were very strong, when he saw that Feng Xingjian, who had always been undefeatable, was being suppressed so easily by death-revealing heavenly eyes, Charlot's mood turned extremely grim. This won't do. Yushan looked at the battle situation in the sky. Right now, the attention of this conferred knight, who had been tricked by Charlot, was also attracted by the rarely seen battle in the sky. With his heaven's perception, he was able to somewhat understand the situation in the battlefield. Feng Xingjian is no longer able to attack the Guardian Kings, and each of the Guardian King's glances is enough to cause him serious injuries. Right now, he's barely holding on and probably won't be able to hold on for much longer. Yushan sighed and said, "The Guardian King's divine arts are too terrifying. As long as it's within his line of sight, he can destroy it at will. There's even no telling how far away it is. This is even more terrifying in this space." Earlier, Feng Xingjian's sword light instantly became a small, probably reaching the boundaries of this space. However, he was still dealt serious injuries by the Guardian King's glances. As long as he's trapped in this space, there's nothing here, no obstacles, and he's unable to move or dodge for a long distance. Even Feng Xingjian has no chance of winning. Hearing that, the worry in Charlot's eyes grew even stronger. Yushinru also felt the same way. However, Feng Xingjian was someone from the Empire after all. When she heard what her father said, she could not help but ask, "Father, can we help him? Help him?" Yushan let out a bitter laugh. "We don't even have the right to speak here. Moreover, he's the one who asked for this. To think that he would even dare to attack the holy sea of Truth's guardian kings with his sword arts." Charlot, who was at the side, said unwillingly, "The guardian kings were the ones who attacked first. So what?" Yushan said slowly, "The holy sea of truth is the strongest influence in the world. Facing such an opponent, the only way out is to surrender." At the moment he resisted, not only did he bring harm to himself, but he also brought harm to his subordinates, family, disciples, and us. Do you think that the guardian kings will be satisfied after killing him? The holy sea of truth loves to kill people consecutively. Hearing Yushan's words, the countenances of Charlot, Yushan's daughter Yuxianru, and Yushan's disciple Clade changed, turning extremely grim. Chapter 809. They were the #1 influence in the world, the strongest organization in the world. Such a reputation had always been filled with bloodshed and killing intents. They had killed their way through time and time again. The piles of white bones under the holy sea of truth were the corpses of countless experts that proved how powerful they were. Over the countless years, the guardian kings and divine arts knights of the holy sea of truth had killed countless so-called heretics. If a heretic were to be discovered in a village, the entire village would be purified, and several hundred or even several thousand people would be burned to death. If a mage were to be discovered in a tribe, the entire tribe would be captured and killed. It could be said that it was rare to see mages and members of other religious factions in the entire Papal States and the Northern Plains. If not for the existence of the Mage Association, the people from the church would have long since marched down to the south and uprooted the Sacred Fire Order in the Sand Country. Even now, many of the experts in the Empire still understood how terrifying the Holy Sea of Truth was. This was even more so for Deputy Governor Yushan. He understood clearly that regardless of what conflicts there were between Feng Xingjian and the Holy Sea of Truth, as Feng Xingjian's companions, they would definitely be dealt with by the Holy Sea of Truth in the future. These guardian kings were unreasonable when it came to killing people. Yu Xianru revealed a worried expression and said, "It can't be, Father. They only came in with them. If we explain things to them properly, they won't kill us, right?" Yushan smiled coldly and said, "Do the church really need a reason to kill? 150 years ago, the Steel Lion Kingdom was not the only one in the Northern Plains. It was because the Golden Eagle tribe's Prince Zuoxian had befriended a mage that the 400,000 members of the Golden Eagle tribe were all killed. They were slaughtered like cattle and sheep, and their blood dyed the entire plains red. Even all the shamans in the plains were massacred, and the Holy Sea of Truth was the only sect left in the Northern Plains. Therefore, the Steel Lion Kingdom is now the one in charge in the Northern Plains." After talking about this part of history, Yu Xianru shut her mouth. However, Clade said unwillingly, "Could it be that we can only wait for death?" Yushan sighed. "Unless Feng Xingjian is able to defeat him." Hearing Yushan's reply, both Yu Xianru and Clade despaired. Right now, Feng Xingjian could not even defeat a guardian emperor, let alone two of them. Amidst the crowd, the first prince, who was looking at the situation of the battle, was also extremely satisfied. There was an excited smile in his eyes. As expected of the Holy Sea of Truth, the strongest force on the continent, any two law emperors would be able to easily suppress Feng Xingjian. Thinking of this, the corners of the first prince's lips curled up into a smile. This way, even if Feng Xingjian were to rush over, he wouldn't be a match for these two guardian kings. At the thought of this, the first prince suddenly could not wait to see Feng Xingjian rush over. Just the thought of being able to witness Feng Xingjian being suppressed and killed by the guardian kings made the first prince feel great. It was because he had been suppressed by Feng Xingjian for far too long. Ever since the Hades Vault, Feng Xingjian had become stronger and more terrifying each time they met. Feng Xingjian would defeat the first prince completely every time. It was as if there was an endless stretch of dark clouds hanging over the first prince's head, causing him to be unable to see any light or hope. Just then, a stream of sword light appeared in the air. The moment it entered, it merged with another stream of sword light, becoming one. In that instant, the two streams of sword light merged into one, and waves of world-shaking auras that seemed as if they were going to fill up the entire world burst forth. Wave after wave of strong gales swept out across the white jade square. Countless people looked at the two streams of sword light that were intersecting in the sky, and all of them revealed astonished expressions. It was Feng Xingjian, who had rushed over from the outside, finally arriving in the square. The moment he merged with 50% of the powers here, waves of information and emotions kept on intersecting between the two. As he was no longer in the same timeline and universe as Miracle World, Feng Xingjian, who was in the white jade square, was not affected by the purple mage king in the outside world. However, this time around, when 50% of Feng Xingjian from the outside world came here, he also brought along a tremendous amount of information. Grief, fury, joy, and all sorts of emotions exploded in Feng Xingjian's heart. The veil of a new realm at the microscopic level was lifted before him. His eyes pierced through layers of space, as if seeing through the entire microscopic world. He saw countless waves, microscopic particles, and countless indescribable phenomena. Many scenes of light and shadows appeared before him, as if forming countless scenes. In a luxurious and spacious bedroom, a child was being carried by a middle-aged woman. The child's head was still wrapped in white bandages. His black eyes were wide open as he looked at the middle-aged woman and asked, "Grandmother, what kind of person is my mother?" The middle-aged woman touched the boy's face pitifully and said, "Your mother is the greatest genius in this world, an unrivaled hero. As for the thoughts of those ants, there's no need for you to care." The boy continued to ask, "Then can we kill all of them?" The middle-aged woman's gaze froze slightly, and she seemed to unconsciously move away from the boy by a few inches. Her eyes were filled with wariness as she asked, "Why would you think that?" The boy laughed and said, "I'm just joking." The many scenes of light and shadows came and went very quickly. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared from Feng Xingjian's mind. It was as if he had suddenly recalled his memories in the past. However, Feng Xingjian was at a loss regarding the scenes in his mind. However, this brief moment where he was in a slight daze had been too long for the two Guardian Kings present. It was sufficient for them to do many things. Right now, Feng Xingjian had merged into one, and he was carrying the three divine swords, Abyss, Thunder Calamity, and Panwei. His powers were world-shaking, and even the two Guardian Kings felt apprehensive at the sight of the situation. What a guy! To think that he didn't use his full powers earlier? As expected of a guy who blasphemes the gods. Attacked together. In an instant, Darkness Aberration, who had been staying at the side to guard against the Gold Mage King, also made a move. This Guardian King, who had come to the Empire together with death-revealing heavenly eyes, also performed a powerful divine art right off the bat. Darkness Aberration was different from death-revealing heavenly eyes' absolute offensive prowess. What he brought was a type of absolute defense. He was able to create an unknown black substance that seemed to be able to neutralize all attacks that were triggered from electromagnetic forces, gravitational forces, strong forces, and weak forces. This meant that this substance was almost indestructible, and the various weapons and defensive equipment he formed all possessed an almost invincible defense. Therefore, at the instant Darkness Aberration made his move, layers of black lumps sealed up Feng Xingjian. They were like pieces of curtains that gradually formed a black sphere. However, the greatest weakness of Darkness Aberration's ability was that its formation speed was too slow. Compared to the attacks of divine-level experts, their formation speed required over 1/10 of a second. It was far too slow. If it were any other time, Feng Xingjian would be able to dodge this attack with a single thought. However, he was in a daze. Therefore, in the instant that he was in a daze, Darkness Aberration had already encompassed Feng Xingjian in an unknown dark substance, forming a black sphere with a diameter of about 3 meters. Chapter 8:10. It's done. Darkness Aberration was a little stunned as he looked at the black sphere before him. It was as if he had not expected that he would succeed so easily. He had prepared a series of follow-up means, but he had not expected that he would be able to capture Fang Xingjian so easily. However, he was stunned for a moment and then did not bother with it anymore. After all, as long as one was encompassed by darkness aberration, there would be no possibility of breaking through. The dark matter formed by darkness aberration had an almost absolute defense. Even Tier 8 or 9 divine level experts would probably not be able to shatter the dark matter with brute force. It might be that he's unable to control the surge in his powers. This Fang Xingjian already has such great powers at such a young age. It's normal that his realm can't keep up. Seeing that Fang Xingjian had been instantly suppressed, the first prince revealed an excited expression. With this, his life will be safe. Fang Xingjian is doomed this time around. It seems that the Holy Sea of Truth is more reliable. I might need to borrow its powers to inherit the throne. On the other side, Charlotte and the others looked as if they had lost their souls. Many experts present whispered among themselves, their eyes filled with astonishment. That's Fang Xingjian, but to think that he couldn't even withstand a single move. So what if he's Fang Xingjian? His opponent is the Holy Sea of Truth. It's normal for him to fail. This is the power of a guardian king. Is there really someone who can defeat such a monster? However, death-revealing heavenly eyes and darkness aberration did not think much of this. To them, the only ones who could defeat them were the other guardian kings and saints. Their victory was a matter of course, so there was nothing to feel emotional about. Fang Xingjian has been sealed in the dark matter. It's impossible for him to escape. Then let's bring him back and hand him over to the saint to deal with. Since the capture of Fang Xingjian has been completed, then the next thing to deal with is the ritual. The exchange was completed almost instantly. After taking care of Fang Xingjian, the two of them turned to look at the Gold Mage King. Death-revealing heavenly eyes said coldly, "Gold Mage King, stop your ritual immediately." The Gold Mage King smiled and shrugged, still wearing an expression as if everything was within his expectations. He looked at the blood-colored vortex in the sky and suddenly said, "It's almost time. I'll leave the rest to you." With that, he disappeared, leaving the crowd in a daze on the white jade square. Seeing that the Gold Mage King had suddenly disappeared, everyone present panicked. Only the two Law Emperors remained as calm as ever. The two of them continued to communicate through the information stream. This should be the Gold Mage King's divine country, the time corridor. Otherwise, it's impossible for him to disappear just like that. This guy put his god kingdom in another world. God kingdoms can't exist across worlds. Does that mean he gave up the god kingdom of his original world? No matter what, I must first think of a way to stop the ritual. As they spoke, the two of them looked at the blood-colored vortex in the sky. Death-revealing heavenly eyes was the first to make a move. The two crosses above his eyeballs trembled abruptly, and then a black dot appeared in the blood-colored vortex. The same physical annihilation, spatial compression, and gravitational singularity shrank. Extreme destructive prowess was once again displayed. It was as if the blood-colored vortex had experienced a big bang. However, the vortex only trembled slightly. After a portion of it dissipated, it started to gather once again. Death-revealing heavenly eyes' brows furrowed. This isn't an ordinary passageway. It seems to be some kind of gate that connects to other universes. After I destroyed its end here, the energy source behind it quickly recovered and reconnected. Let me give it a try. Darkness Aberration raised his palm, and many black panels appeared in the air. There was a total of 6 black, cube-shaped material blocks. Clearly, he wanted to encompass the entire blood-colored vortex within the black cubes, using the absolute defense of the dark matter to seal the blood-colored vortex. This way, even if something really came out from the other side, it should not be able to break through the black cubes. Many black panels floated next to the blood-colored vortex, quickly forming a cube that encompassed the entire vortex. All right, with this, even if an evil god's clone were to descend from it, it'll be impossible for him to break through from it. Darkness Aberration was extremely confident in this. It was because his dark matter was something that none of the 3 saints and 21 guardian kings in the Holy Sea of Truth had been able to destroy. Death-revealing heavenly eyes nodded and said, "Then the next step will be to break through the Gold Mage King's divine country and think of a way to stop the entire ritual." However, at the next moment, the blood-colored vortex expanded abruptly. Under death-revealing heavenly eyes and darkness aberrations' astonished gazes, the 6 pieces of dark matter that formed the cube were sucked into the blood-colored vortex and disappeared. To think that it can still expand. Darkness Aberration's eyes narrowed abruptly. It's unable to break through the dark matter, but it can shift the space where the dark matter is located and engulf it into another universe. The 2 guardian kings exchanged a glance, seeming to see the troubled expression in each other's eyes. However, the situation did not give them much time. Just as the 2 of them were feeling troubled, a palm that was covered in purple stratum corneum reached out from the center of the blood-colored vortex. Almost at the instant the palm appeared, a gush of overwhelming evil aura gushed forth. That evil, brutal, terrifying, and despairing aura kept on impacting everyone present. Countless conferred night experts even lost control of their libido from the impact of the aura, peeing their pants one after another. That feeling was like a mouse encountering a tiger. It was an instinctive terror that had been ingrained into the genes of generations after generations. Even death-revealing heavenly eyes and darkness aberration felt a sense of terror that they had not felt for a very long time. They had already condensed their conjured physiques and no longer had any blood vessels or hair. However, at this moment, death-revealing heavenly eyes and darkness aberration both had the misconception that their blood had frozen up and their hair was standing on end. Even the transmission of their martial wills had a stiff and distorted feeling. Is this the evil god's clone? The battle had yet to start, and they had not even seen the other party's full appearance. However, the evil aura gushing forth made everyone present feel as if they were doomed. At the next moment, the palm that was covered in purple stratum corneum pulled abruptly. It was as if it was dragging space, and a purple figure darted out from the blood-colored vortex, landing on the ground with a bang. It swayed its body slightly, as if it had just finished diving into the water, shaking off a little of the blood on its body. That living being stood up straight, with a height of 5 meters. Its entire body was covered in purple stratum corneum, and its tail, which was close to 7 to 8 meters long, kept on lashing out in the air. Its eyes had a pair of vertical pupils that were slightly yellowish, and they swept past everyone present. Everyone who was swept by its gaze felt their bodies turn soft. "Who summoned me from the Red River?" That living being grinned, revealing the countless sharp teeth in its mouth. I can smell food." Chapter 8:11. Looking at this monster, everyone present felt an endless sense of terror. It was only when the other party's voice rang out in their hearts that everyone present seemed to react slightly. However, at the next moment, with a flash, the purple monster appeared before a demigod. It was the beast god from earlier. He had encountered Yushan and the others and was thought to be able to attain a breakthrough to the divine level at any moment. However, at this moment, he was facing a monster from an unknown world. The purple monster's hand flashed and grabbed out toward the beast god's head. Looking at the huge palm that the other party had put out, the beast god's gaze flickered as he forcefully suppressed the terror in his body. Although it's terrifying, this monster doesn't seem to be very fast. Maybe its strength isn't as astonishing as its aura? The Beast King's gaze flickered, and the bones throughout his body let out explosive sounds. In that instant, it was as if there were several 10,000 wild beasts roaring. At the next moment, the beast god punched out. It was the ultimate technique that he was famous for, the myriad beast fist. This punch brought with it an unstoppable aura, as if there were really countless ferocious beasts running over from void space. This was a fist technique that the Beast King had created after observing, capturing, and battling countless ferocious beasts. He had studied the abilities of various ferocious beasts, as well as the way they circulated their forces. For the sake of martial arts, he had traveled to countless corners of the world, fighting with tigers and leopards in the forests, fighting with lions and wolves in the plains, fighting with apes, huge snakes, and other ferocious beasts in the mountains. He had even dived into the seas to fight with sea monsters. This was a fist technique that he had dedicated his entire life to. Seething forces spread out intensely with his fist, as if many ferocious beasts were tearing and crushing the enemy before him. Bang! The fist, which could destroy an entire street, collapse city walls, and shatter aircraft carriers, smashed onto the purple monster's chest along with layers of forces. However, at the next moment, the beast god's fist was completely shattered, and the reaction force smashed another half of his body into minced meat. Looking at this scene, the beast god's mind went completely blank. There was no defense, no reduced force field, martial will, or anything like that to reduce damage. Just the rebounding force from the attack had blasted half of the beast god's body, a demigod with 4 tiers of perfection. However, the purple monster acted as if it hadn't been attacked at all. It stretched out its hand, twisted the orc god's head off, and stuffed it into its mouth. With a crunching sound, the purple monster's head was bitten into pieces and swallowed into its stomach. A happy smile appeared on the purple monster's face. A demigod with 4 tiers of perfection was already able to regenerate headless limbs. The beast god's head quickly regenerated once again. It wanted to retreat, but it was like a pinched bug. The purple monster grabbed it gently, tore off another shoulder, and stuffed it into its mouth. The taste of human flesh. How long has it been since I tasted it? An intoxicated expression appeared on the purple monster's face. In the next moment, a soft sound came from its body. A crack suddenly appeared on the purple stratum corneum on his back. The purple monster turned its head and looked at death-revealing heavenly eyes. It said calmly, "Are you attacking me?" Right now, death-revealing heavenly eyes' face was filled with astonishment. At the next moment, crackling sounds rang out incessantly, and the purple monster seemed to have been struck by invisible attacks consecutively. Cracks appeared on its hands, legs, waist, and even its face. However, the cracks only appeared for 1 to 2 seconds before they healed up once again, as if they were just ordinary scratches. However, the thing that caused these scratches was death-revealing heavenly eyes' absolute attack, an attack that could surpass the microscopic realm and distort the 4 types of forces. At this moment, the one who found this the most unacceptable was death-revealing heavenly eyes himself. He stared at the purple monster as if he was looking at a nightmare. The 4 fundamental forces are the cornerstones of the universe. The heavenly thunders and terrestrial magnetism forces, the Earth's astral forces, the nuclear forces that create life, and the forces that cause all living things to deteriorate. They circulate the world's great Tao and control the circulation of all living things in the world. A scene suddenly flashed in death-revealing heavenly eyes' mind. It was the teachings given to him by the previous generation's strongest expert in the Holy See of Truth, the previous Pope. For those below Tier 5 of the divine level, everything is just for the sake of being able to step into the microscopic realm. The microscopic realm allows one to enter deep into the microscopic world and control one of the 4 types of forces. Of course, some geniuses are able to control all of them. However, this kind of control is still an illusion. It's just using one's powers on the microscopic world, which is equivalent to turning one's powers into the 4 fundamental forces. And your death-revealing heavenly eyes is a divine art that surpasses the microscopic realm and can truly control a portion of the 4 fundamental forces. He can directly destroy the cornerstones of the 4 fundamental forces, space-time. That's the impeccable realm, a realm that's even more profound than the microscopic realm. However, it doesn't mean that there are no opponents who can't destroy it. In death-revealing heavenly eyes' memories, that young man in white robes with a benevolent smile, said, "Once the opponent possesses a certain special trait, they'll be able to resist your destruction. Resist my decomposition?" The heavenly thunders and terrestrial magnetism forces connect physical particles and form the structure of matter. The nuclear forces are the foundation for the formation of physical particles. These two types of powers are the foundation of all living things in the world. Once a living creature is able to grasp these powers proficiently, and the amount they grasp is greater than what your death-revealing heavenly eyes can grasp, then you won't be able to destroy their structure. It's like a tug of war. The stronger one will win. Their powers surpass yours, and they'll be able to continue maintaining the existence of space-time and matter. Death-revealing heavenly eyes had thought that he would never encounter a living creature that could resist his attacks in his entire life. He had even forgotten about the Pope's words in his distant memories. However, when he unleashed all of his powers and was only able to leave a slight scratch on the purple monster's skin, the Pope's teachings rang out in his ears once again. On the other side, the purple monster looked at its body that was being attacked and revealed an amused expression. How boring. At the next moment, Feng Xingjian dashed out toward death-revealing heavenly eyes' gaze and instantly appeared before him. The wounds all over his body recovered once again, and the strong gales brought about by his movements were like a typhoon passing by. It caused the experts in the surroundings to narrow their eyes, sway their hair, and flutter loudly. Death-revealing heavenly eyes continued to stare at the purple monster's face, continuously tearing its face. The monster punched out as if it had transcended time and space. Facing death-revealing heavenly eyes' gaze, it smashed his opponent's head instantly like it was a piece of tofu that had been smashed by a fist. This church's guardian king's conjured physique was extremely weak before the purple monster. A drop of crimson blood finally flowed out from the monster's face. This was the greatest effect of death-revealing heavenly eyes' incessant attacks. Amidst the furious will, Darkness Aberration made his move once again. Right now, his entire body was encompassed in dark matter, as if he was wearing a black armor. He appeared behind the monster with a flash and kicked out, bringing about a force that was like a tsunami gushing out. A power that could cause a magnitude 20 earthquake was contained in this kick, and wherever it passed by, the space would tremble and create ripples. Eventually, it lashed out fiercely against the back of the purple monster's head. Chapter 8:12. Bang! A violent power struck the back of the purple monster's head. However, it was unable to even move the purple monster's head. The monster grabbed out with one hand and grabbed onto Darkness Aberration's body. Without even taking a look, it exerted a great force. The purple monster revealed a strange expression and turned to look at Darkness Aberration, who was wrapped up by the dark matter. His arm abruptly swelled up, and his muscles contracted abruptly. It was as if the engines of a 10,000-ton tanker had been activated. A punch that could split open the ocean struck out, bringing about a hurricane that could tear apart steel and ruthlessly smashed onto the dark matter. There was no sound, no collision, not even a slight undulation. The punch landed on the dark matter, but there was still no effect. The dark matter created by Darkness Aberration could directly negate all attacks formed by the four powers. The power of the purple monster's punch was completely negated, and it could not even cause any damage. At the next moment, Darkness Aberration also fell from the purple monster's palm. As the dark matter itself could not withstand any force, the purple monster was unable to grab onto it. Interesting. Can it digest all attacks on a microscopic level? The corners of the monster's lips curled up into a hint of a smile as he looked at Darkness Aberration, who seemed to possess an invincible defense. He smiled and raised his palm, putting up 3 fingers and said, "But now, I've already seen at least 3 weaknesses." 3 weaknesses? Darkness Aberration repeated calmly and did not reply. Death-revealing heavenly eyes, who was at the side, had already recovered his shattered head. However, he did not move recklessly either. Even his strongest technique was useless against his opponent. He no longer had any other techniques he could use against his opponent. The first weakness is that your skin is able to nullify the attacks of the four forces. So how can you see me? How could he move? How can you communicate with me? What you did to the black skin should have been canceled out as well. The purple monster chuckled. That means there are loopholes in your skin. Those loopholes are places you use to probe, communicate, and attack. The second weakness is that everything in the world has a limit, and the same goes for your abilities. To be able to withstand 2 of my punches just now, it means that the upper limit of the dark matter you created far exceeds the output of that fellow's eyes. But as long as it surpasses this limit, it will definitely be able to shatter this layer of defense on your body. But it's very likely that even I won't be able to surpass this limit. So, the second weakness is not really a weakness. The purple monster's gaze kept sweeping across darkness aberration, and it chuckled. As for the last weakness, it's yourselves. If you rely too much on this special ability, your own strength and realm will be too weak. As he spoke, the purple monster flashed slightly and appeared behind darkness aberration. He then threw a punch toward darkness aberration's back. Wherever the tip of the fist went, the entire fist seemed to become invisible, and the power of the entire strike turned into a wave-like existence. Waves were diffraction. As long as there was a hole in the dark matter armor, the power would directly penetrate through the hole and into the armor. Not only had the monster before them grasped the 4 fundamental forces and entered the minute subtlety realm, but it was also far more powerful than any of the experts the 2 Law Emperors had encountered in the past. After the oscillating punch, darkness aberration instantly turned into a cloud of blood mist. Outside the white jade square, inside the ceremony, the gold mage king floated quietly in the sky above the imperial capital. In his vision, the red mage king was like a cat playing with mice, chasing after a group of conferred knights. Occasionally, the red mage king would kill one and eat another, having a great time. Next to the gold mage king, the black mage king narrowed his eyes, appearing like a cat that had eaten its fill. The gold mage king said with a grim countenance, "It seems that the 2 Law Emperors aren't a match for it. What on earth is this?" The black mage king smiled and said, "It's the offspring of the red evil god." It was only after the black mage king's explanation that the gold mage king understood what it was. The red evil god had always been living in the Red River. What was the Red River? It was a great river that spanned across countless universes. Its branches flowed into countless other universes, crossing the limits of time and space. No one knew how long this river had existed, nor did anyone know who had created it. The only thing the mages knew was that the red evil god had control over this red river. Under his control, only his descendants and clansmen could exist in the Red River. Those monsters with long tails and horns had wreaked havoc in countless universes and worlds, and their favorite thing to do was to eat humans. This race called themselves the Evil God Tribe. They were born with strength and speed that far surpassed that of humans. It was because from the moment they were born, they were able to convert their physical strength into heavenly thunders and terrestrial magnetism forces, as well as nuclear creation forces. This meant that they had stepped into the microscopic realm from the moment they were born. This was an extremely great injustice to other life forms. However, the natural world was unfair to begin with. Some living creatures were born countless times stronger than other living creatures. Their mastery of heavenly thunders and terrestrial magnetism forces, as well as nuclear creation forces, allowed them to keep on strengthening the toughness of their physical structures. They also strengthened the various powers in their movements. After all, the formation and collisions of all macroscopic objects relied on these 2 fundamental forces. This bestowed the Evil God Tribe with extremely great strength and speed, as well as an extremely high toughness of their bodies. It was as the Black Mage King had said earlier. They were extremely fast and extremely strong. To think that they're a race? The Gold Mage King's gaze turned increasingly grim. But if that's the case, aren't you afraid of attracting a group of monsters after we summoned the Red River over? If there are more of such things, all the humans in the world will probably be wiped out. Don't worry. There aren't many demons like that in the entire universe. The possibility of a group of them coming is too low, the Black Mage King said with a smile. Moreover, this isn't Miracle World. It's not even a universe. If it's really beyond our control, we can just give up on this place. The Gold Mage King nodded and said, Death revealing heavenly eyes and darkness aberration probably won't be able to hold on for long. What do you plan to do next? They'll definitely move at akin to light speed to drag out time and look for opportunities. However, they'll soon discover that they have no chance at all. These evil god tribe members are born to be the nemesis of humans. But at the very least, they'll be able to deplete their energy, the Black Mage King said, licking his lips. As for what's next, later on, you just need to unlock the Divine Country and leave the rest to the two of us. The Gold Mage King nodded and did not say anything. After all, he was not planning on dealing with that monster that was wreaking havoc in his Divine Country. To him, the data and information from hosting the ritual, coming into contact with the Red River, gathering first-hand information that connected to other universe passageways, and observing the space-time changes were sufficient for him to comprehend and attain a breakthrough to Tier 6 of the Divine level. Chapter 8:13. Darkness. There was endless darkness in the surroundings. When one reached out to touch it, it seemed as if there was no place that could withstand any force. Even when one sent out their martial will, it seemed as if they would never be able to find the end of this darkness. When Feng Xingjian regained his senses, what he saw was this endless dark space. After being encompassed by the dark matter, as the dark matter could negate the various impacts from the four great forces, the martial will would be neutralized when it scanned over, and the powers that one would reach out with their hand would also be neutralized. This was a strange feeling. One would not be able to sense any resistance or reaction force, yet they were unable to move their bodies. Moreover, all one could see was absolute darkness. In a situation where there was no reference, one would feel as if they were in an endless dark space, unable to reach the end no matter how much they moved. Feng Xingjian's gaze flickered slightly. What's going on? Why do I feel as if I've been sent to another universe? Feng Xingjian's martial will extend it out rapidly. However, other than the endless darkness in the surroundings, he could not receive any other feedback. Universe's vacuum? In some universe's dark region? Feng Xingjian frowned slightly. Is that possible? To be able to instantly send me to such a great distance. If they have such an ability, why didn't they kill me directly? At the thought of this, his martial will once again continue to sweep out, as if wanting to do everything he could to probe out toward the surroundings. Waves of darkness surged forth. There was no light or information. Before this endless darkness, everyone would feel as if space and time had all sorts of dislocations. Just as Feng Xingjian continued to send out waves of his martial will, there seemed to be light and shadows flashing in the darkness. Many scenes appeared before his eyes, causing his gaze to gradually become dazed. In the pure white observation room, a young boy was sitting on a chair. He was wearing white, restraining clothes, and his big black eyes were looking curiously at his surroundings. In front of him was a huge floor-to-ceiling glass window, and the woman standing outside the window had a serious and worried expression on her face. What are the results? Next to the lady, a middle-aged man in white robes said, We've tested him thrice. It might be a mental disorder. His emotions continue to be low, and he has autism tendencies. Speak simply, the woman said coldly. The man in the white coat nodded and said, He almost doesn't feel any emotions. He just lives in his own world. But he was very smart. Like all cubs, he had been imitating the behavior and movements of the adults. He did it very well, which made him look normal. But did you let him see anything bloody and violent recently? That was why his personality seemed to have changed. But in fact, it's just a kind of imitation. His true personality, hidden in the depths of his heart, will never change. How is this possible? He's just an ordinary boy, the woman said in disbelief. Normal boys don't kill people at the age of 5. At that moment, the woman suddenly said, This glass is one way, right? Yeah, what's wrong? When the white-coat scientist heard this, he looked at the little boy behind the glass. However, he discovered that the little boy was already staring at him. A creepy feeling assaulted him. He had the illusion that he was being stared at by a ferocious beast. Sensing the darkness before him, there seemed to be something churning and surging in it before looking at him. It gave Fang Xingjian a feeling of déjà vu. The darkness before him mixed with the flashing lights and shadows, making him unable to tell what was real and what was fake. Is this my memory? They're so unfamiliar. Or are they illusions as well? Fang Xingjian's thoughts changed slightly, and the darkness before him completely disappeared. Above his head was a blue sky with white clouds, and beneath his feet was a lush green lawn. It was as if the darkness had never existed. Looking at the scenery before him, Fang Xingjian spread out his arms. Following that, he felt a gentle breeze blowing at his face. When he smelled the fragrance of the fragrant grass, he sighed and said, still lacking a little. At the next moment, as his palms swept across, the endless lawn was instantly filled with a myriad of purple and red flowers. This is much better. At the same time, several hundred meters away, a woman and a little boy were slowly walking among the flowers. Looking at the two people before him, Fang Xingjian's gaze was once again filled with perplexity. Are these my memories again? But why can't I remember? On the other side, the battle on the White Jade Plaza had become one-sided. Faced with the evil god tribe's warrior that had grasped the heavenly thunders and terrestrial magnetism forces and nuclear generation forces from birth, the two guardian kings kept on being pushed back. Regardless of whether it was death-revealing heavenly eyes or darkness aberration, neither of them were able to break through the purple monster's body and deal any damage to it. They were also unable to fend off its attacks. A soft sound seemed to ring out in void space, and death-revealing heavenly eyes' body shattered bit by bit. As he shattered this time around, he did not turn into a new, conjured physique. Instead, he split up completely, turning into a stream of light that scattered out. Trying to escape? The purple monster let out a cold laugh and looked at Darkness Aberration. Right now, Darkness Aberration's body had also shattered, and he was moving at a speed akin to light speed in the sky above the White Jade Square. At this moment, the hearts of the two Guardian Kings were extremely heavy. The strength of the monster in front of them was far beyond their imagination, and it made the two of them have the same thought. We must think of a way to escape. We must immediately send a message to the church. Only by gathering the powers of the saints will we be able to defeat this evil god's clone. Everyone in the square was stunned by this battle. The two Guardian Kings, who had been so arrogant and had instantly suppressed Fang Xingjian, were now being pushed back repeatedly by the purple monster's pressure. Looking at the flashing light rays in the sky, Yushan frowned and said, "This is bad. The two Guardian Kings probably aren't a match for this evil god's clone either." Clade said, "How is that possible? The Guardian Kings are already top-notch experts in Miracle World. If even they aren't a match for it, then doesn't that mean that no one else will be able to deal with this evil god's clone?" Charlot sighed and said, "If they're a match for it, how could they possibly flee like this? They're constantly moving at light speed to avoid clashing head-on with the evil god's clone." That's right. Although Yushan had yet to attain the divine level, as the Eastern Sand region's deputy governor, he had a lot of experience. He had a good grasp of the current situation of the battlefield. Regardless of whether it's death-revealing heavenly eyes attack or darkness aberration's defense, they're both unrivaled in the world. However, when these two divine arts are of no use, they no longer have any chances of winning against the evil god's clone. Yushan's gaze was extremely grim. Right now, it all depends on whether this evil god's clone can kill the Guardian Kings who are moving at light speed. Chapter 814. Compared to the observations of Yushan, Charlot, and the others, the first prince's grasp of the battlefield was even more accurate. After all, he had once been the strongest expert amongst the Empire's younger generation, a genius who had stepped into the divine level. Looking at the battlefield before him, his frown deepened. Not only has this evil god's clone entered the microscopic realm, but his grasp of the microscopic world is also above that of the two guardian kings. His grasp of the microscopic world's powers, which are formed from his body, is extremely firm. This causes his body's density to be extremely high, probably many times higher than that of the Red Mage King. It also causes each of his attacks to be in accordance with the laws of the microscopic world. Each punch and kick is an attack at the microscopic level. The first prince exhaled and felt a deep sense of terror as he looked at the purple monster. The microscopic realm, which is extremely difficult for us, is as easy as eating and drinking to him. Is this the power of an evil god? If that's the case, worry flashed in the first prince's eyes. If this evil god's clone were to continue acting recklessly and barge out of the ritual, then the Empire would be the first to suffer. It's not just the Empire. This will be a great crisis that is comparable to the Seventh Onslaught. The entire human society might be dealt a heavy blow as a result. Although the many other human experts did not see the situation as clearly as the first prince, they understood that the two guardian kings were at a disadvantage. Looking at the relaxed purple monster on the battlefield, they gritted their teeth and kept on praying for the guardian kings to win. Moving at light speed, looking at the two guardian kings who had turned into existences that were purely martial will and were shooting out in all directions like electromagnetic waves, the purple monster broke into a mocking smile. Do you think that I won't be able to do anything just because you're moving at light speed? Do you think that you're Saint Seiya? In this state, all of you are only weaker to me. At the next moment, its yellow vertical pupils contracted abruptly, revealing a dazed expression. Then it suddenly punched toward the sky. With a rumble and an explosive sound, it was as if Mount Tai and Mount Kunlun had collided together. Countless light spots exploded in the sky, and darkness aberrations martial were shattered. How is this possible? How are you able to attack us? The purple monster's face was still filled with confusion, and it did not respond to the information it received. It punched out again. Death-revealing heavenly eyes paid close attention to this punch. Under the scanning of his martial will, he could sense that wherever Fong Xingjian's fist passed by, the space would become extremely compressed. 1,000 meters became 100 meters, 100 meters became 10 meters, 10 meters became 1 meter, and 1 meter became 1 centimeter. Wherever the punch went, space would be compressed by 100,000 times. In the same amount of time, the distance traveled by 100,000 times would be increased by 100,000 times. Superliminal strike. The death-revealing discerning eyes will trembled, emitting a voice filled with both shock and fury. Compressing space and stretching space. This was something that even a Tier 5 divine level expert could do. However, to achieve an astonishing performance that was 100,000 times greater was far from what a mere Tier 5 divine level expert could do. This was a shocking attack that could only be performed after one had mastered the power of the earth and stars to a certain degree in the minute subtlety realm. The power of the earth and stars was the attractive force between all objects. It had the widest range of effect in the macroscopic world, and it was the force with the highest numerical value. It was also the force that was most commonly used in space. The heavenly thunders and terrestrial magnetism forces, the power of the earth and stars, the nuclear power, and the power that caused all living things to decay. These four basic forces in the microscopic world formed all the phenomena in the natural world. Regardless of whether it was the sun and moon's circulation in the sky, the evolution of the myriad of living creatures on the ground, or the birth, aging, sickness, and death of the human body. All the phenomena in the world were merely the effects of these four forces. With each mastery of one of the four forces, one would be able to comprehend all sorts of profoundness. The purple monster clearly did not just have a good grasp of the heavenly thunders and terrestrial magnetism forces, as well as the nuclear power. It also had powerful offensive and defensive abilities. It had also grasped a portion of the Earth and stars' powers and was even able to perform superluminal speed attacks by compressing space. At this moment, death-revealing heavenly eyes suddenly understood. Not only were they unable to escape from the purple monster's attacks, even though they were moving at light speed, but they were also extremely weak after abandoning their conjured physique forms. Rumble. Another punch struck out. It was as if the sky had collapsed and as if the stars had exploded. Death-revealing heavenly eyes Marshall will instantly shattered, turning into a myriad of light spots that exploded and scattered out. The purple monster's eyes were still in a daze. What the two Guardian Kings did not know was that the monster had not only launched superluminal speed attacks, but had also activated one of its race's abilities, Battle Intuition. It was an ability that was similar to sudden inspiration and relied purely on instinctive reactions to predict the opponent's movements. It relied on this ability to predict the two Guardian Kings' light speed movements and then used superluminal speed attacks to intercept them, resulting in the current attack. At the next moment, it was as if a myriad of thunderclaps had exploded, or as if the tectonic plates of the world had shattered. Fist forces ran amok in the sky, intersecting with each other. It was as if the entire world had turned into a huge millstone, crazily grinding out the two Guardian Kings' martial wills and not even giving them the chance to regenerate their conjured physiques. Simultaneously, a myriad of air forces came gushing down. Each of the purple monster's attacks went deep into the microscopic world, and the repercussions they caused were extremely small. However, even if it was just a millionth of its prowess, it was already extremely terrifying to everyone present. Yushan let out a furious bellow and turned into a bright moon, standing before Yushinru, Clade, and Charlot. Streams of Air Force repercussions struck his body crazily. In an instant, he was covered in blood, and his bones, tendons, and flesh were broken. He no longer looked like a human. The first prince was only left with 5% of his powers. At the sight of this scene, his heart palpitated wildly, and he retreated rapidly. It was only after retreating over 10 kilometers that he got out of the effective killing range of the Air Force repercussions. The beast god, who had half of his body eaten by the purple monster earlier, had just reassembled his body when he was once again seriously injured by the Air Force repercussions. He was sent flying a distance of 5 to 6 kilometers, falling from a height of several hundred meters. His body was almost shattered into pieces. In almost 1/10 of a second, over half of the experts present were seriously injured, and the remaining half were either killed by the Air Force repercussions or knocked out from exhaustion. A short moment later, the Air Force repercussions finally ended, and Yushan fell down, covered in blood. Father! Yu Shinru dashed up at lightning speed and held Yushan in her arms. Charlot looked at the devastated white jade square, which looked as if it had been bombed by bombers, and then raised his head to look at the sky. Next to him, Yu Shinru's eyes were filled with tears as she looked at Yushan with a sorrowful expression. Father, how are you? Don't scare me. Yushan did not reply. Instead, he looked toward the sky and pointed a trembling finger at the purple figure in the sky. His tone was filled with despair. Quick, quick, run. No one replied him. Everyone looked at the purple monster in the sky in a daze. Death-revealing heavenly eyes and darkness aberration lay on the ground in pieces under the purple monster's feet. The light on their bodies kept on dissipating, as if they would disappear completely at any moment. Death-revealing heavenly eyes and darkness aberration's defeat was like a heavy hammer smashing on everyone's chests. Everyone looked at the purple monster in a daze, unable to imagine who else could subdue it. At the next moment, an aged voice rang out in the world. All right, let's begin. In an instant, the world shattered and the divine country collapsed. Chapter 8:15. The divine country shattered instantly, and the entire space seemed to be slowly melting and dissipating, merging into the space above the imperial capital. Clearly, the Gold Mage King had shut down his divine country and spat out all the living creatures inside. However, it was not as simple as just shutting down the divine country. Just as the divine country was shut down and everyone arrived in the sky above the imperial capital, A black shadow encompassed everyone. The first prince lifted his head and looked at this scene in astonishment. That is, in the sky, endless black shadows encompassed everything. However, when the first prince's marshal scanned over, he immediately discovered that it was not a black shadow, but some kind of blood-red substance. It was because he was looking at it against the light that it looked like a stretch of black shadow. His marshal then scanned to the borders of the black shadows. He saw many white hills hanging upside down. Each of the hills had a height of several hundred meters and exuded a cold glow. These are teeth? At the next moment, his marshal scanned through the entire black shadow and formed an image in the first prince's mind. It was an extremely huge head of the Black Mage King. The shadow it brought with it covered almost 4/5 of the sky above the imperial capital, floating in the sky above the imperial capital in a manner that surpassed the vision of ordinary people. He opened his mouth as if wanting to swallow the entire sky above the imperial capital. The place where the Gold Mage King had shut down the divine country and spat out everyone was clearly the Black Mage King's mouth. By the time the first prince reacted, the mouth that was as huge as a city had suddenly closed up, taking away the last hint of light in the world. Everyone started to plunge down. It was the Black Mage King's tongue. What's going on? Where are we? What on earth happened? In the outside world, the Black Mage King broke into an excited smile. He wanted to engulf an evil god tribe's warrior and borrow the powers of Black Faction Black Magic to engulf this warrior's powers, pushing his cultivation to the top in the world. This was his goal. Black Magic's engulfment is absolute. As long as I swallow it into my stomach, even an evil god tribe's warrior can forget about breaking free. Simultaneously, an intense suction force was generated in the Black Mage King's mouth, pulling all the experts in the mouth toward the depths of the mouth. With this, everyone present felt that the powers in their bodies were getting increasingly weaker. It was as if there was a power in the surroundings that was absorbing the powers in their bodies. My power? The first prince sensed that his powers were becoming increasingly weaker, as if they were being absorbed incessantly. Is this the Black Mage King's ability? Devour. Many of the other experts also felt the same, and all of them revealed a horrified expression. First, the appearance of the two Law Emperors instantly suppressed Feng Xingjian. Following that, the evil god's clone descended and crushed the two Law Emperors, displaying unprecedented destructive and defensive power. Then, the divine kingdom closed, and everyone was sucked into an unknown darkness. They felt their strength constantly draining away. The experience was like a roller coaster ride. The strength of every powerhouse was enough to crush them, causing everyone present to feel as if they had given up on resisting. Right now, the two Guardian Kings had a large amount of their martial wills crushed by the purple monster. Faced with the suction force from the Black Mage King's mouth, they appeared to be unable to resist at all. They could only watch as their bodies flew into the depths of the darkness, and the glow on their bodies grew increasingly dimmer. Not far away from them, the purple monster was also sucked into the depths of the darkness. However, it was clearly impossible for the purple monster to give up resisting like the two Guardian Kings. It struck out with a superluminal attack, and a terrifying fist force swept out like a Category 20 typhoon, striking the Black Mage King's gums. However, the attack that could crush the two Guardian Kings was like a clay ox entering water, instantly absorbed by the Black Mage King. Following that, a few consecutive punches were like a few nuclear missiles that had been ignited in the night sky. Just the repercussive waves from the explosive powers caused friction in the air, but there were still numerous flames that could incinerate an entire city. However, even the powers that had a direct effect on a microscopic world were still absorbed and engulfed by the Black Mage King. Oh, the Black Demonic God's engulfment ability? Is there someone acting on his behalf here? The purple monster's countenance changed. It's really not easy to break through the means of directly stirring space-time to engulf energy. The purple monster seemed to have a great understanding of the Black Mage King's engulfment means. In its opinion, The Black Mage King's ability was no different from the two Guardian Kings from earlier. The Black Mage King merely borrowed external forces to affect the microscopic world. It was just that right now, the Black Mage King was putting in a greater amount of effort. Death-revealing heavenly eyes, who was in the distance, laughed out loud when he saw that the purple monster's attacks were ineffective. Monster, I didn't expect that our life and death battle would end up benefiting those damned mages. Darkness Aberration also wore a hateful expression, feeling extremely worried about the Black Mage King's actions. I wonder how strong the Black Mage King will become after engulfing us. In this world, probably only the three saints will be able to stop him. Hearing that, death-revealing heavenly eyes wore an indifferent expression. The two of them were already top-notch experts in the world, and they were also no match for the evil god's clone. Now that all of them had entered the Black Mage King's stomach, it was hard to imagine what kind of improvements the Black Mage King would receive. However, the purple monster in the distance let out a cold laugh and clenched its fists tightly. "You're still far from being able to eat me." As it spoke, its entire body contracted abruptly. Regardless of whether it was its muscles, bones, or stratum corneum, all of them kept on contracting. It instantly shrank from a height of over 5 meters to a height of 2 meters, appearing as if it had become the size of an ordinary person. The density of its body also instantly increased by several times. It's a battle form that I haven't seen in a long time. Sensing the purple monster's changes, the eyelids of the two Guardian Kings twitched. Although they were not clear of the principles behind this, just by scanning it with their martial will, they could sense that the other party's body's toughness and energy intensity had increased qualitatively once again. If he had fought against us in this form earlier, at the thought of this, a hint of uneasiness suddenly flashed in the hearts of the two of them. At the next moment, the purple monster's body flashed with a red glow. It was an ability unique to the evil god race, Enraged Intent. It used fury to strengthen its physical body's comprehensive powers and could repel everything it wanted to repel. Eat me? To think that there's a human. Are you so foolish that you want to eat me? Roar. The purple monster's expression was distorted, and its eyes turned white, revealing an enraged expression. As this enraged emotion was produced, crimson red light suddenly exploded like blazing flames soaring into the sky. It instantly repelled all the particles within 1 meter around the monster, forming a vacuum state. The purple monster also turned completely red. The toughness of each of its muscle fibers, each piece of bone, and each of its internal organs grew rapidly under the explosive growth of the enraged intent. Then it struck out with a punch. As this punch struck out, the entire space seemed to seethe, and patches of chaotic colors flashed in a microscopic world. It was as if the entire space could no longer maintain its original state. At the next moment, hints of cracks appeared in the space. Under the two Guardian Kings' astonished gazes, the space was broken open by the punch. The truth of Miracle World, that space could never be shattered, was completely overthrown by the Crimson Monster's punch at this moment. Chapter 816. Space could not be shattered. Even if all the experts in the world were to join forces and attack together, they would not be able to shatter space. This was the iron rule of the entire Miracle World, a rule that no one had been able to defy over the past several centuries or even 1,000 years. However, this time around, as the Crimson Monster punched out, space started to shatter. Countless cracks appeared in the air, and as space shattered, large areas of chaos extended out, spreading out in all directions at light speed. The Crimson Monster's punch smashed through the microscopic world's space-time structure, causing the space-time in this instant to plunge into chaos. It then caused the surrounding space to sink into chaos as well. After this punch, a large area of chaotic colors instantly appeared on the Black Mage King's face. His countenance changed drastically, and even his eyes could not help but reveal a horrified expression. Even the Black Mage King had not expected that the evil God Tribe's warrior he had summoned this time around would be so powerful. However, the Black Mage King was an expert at the Mage King level after all, an old monster who was above the Gold Mage King and the Red Mage King. Just as half of his face turned into a stretch of distorted chaos, the remaining part of his face completely broke away and dissipated, once again condensing into a pale-faced old man who wore black robes. The various suction and engulfing forces instantly disappeared, and everyone ran out from the Black Mage King's mouth. Therefore, the countless experts who had been on the White Jade Square descended from the sky, plunging into the distorted and chaotic imperial capital. The two Guardian Kings also plunged toward the ground like two meteors smashing into the ground, creating two craters. However, they did not react to this at all. They merely watched as the large stretch of distortions and chaos in the sky slowly disappeared, leaving behind only that crimson monster in the end. Right now, the monster had once again gone through a transformation. The stratum corneum all over its body had turned crimson red, so red that it looked like fresh blood had flowed out. The enraged intent turned into flames that were over 100 meters long, burning on its body and in the sky behind it. Its eyes had turned completely white, and there was only a hint of fury left on its face. Blatant killing intent seemed to burst out in fear, once again spurring the enraged intent to burn fiercely. At a speed that could be seen by the naked eye, the enraged intent kept on lengthening its crimson flame tail. It was as if a crimson meteor was flying across the sky. "Didn't you want to eat me?" Its mouth split open slowly, but no internal structure could be seen. There was only a stretch of crimson glow seething within. "Are you going to eat me with your head?" Boom! The crimson meteor instantly pierced through the sky, and the blood-red fist smashed into the Black Mage King's stunned face, which had yet to react. Then the fist brought the Black Mage King along and smashed into the ground. Roar! An infuriated will seethed from the Black Mage King's body. His face, which had been struck, had an extremely savage expression, and a colorful glow kept on exploding out from between his face and his fist. It was a power that was comparable to several 10,000 nuclear warheads, and it kept on colliding in the microscopic space between the two of them. The crimson monster swung out its fist once again, colliding fiercely with the Black Mage King's fist. It once again caused a tremendous amount of spatial distortions and chaotic light. At the next moment, their fists collided wildly, and the black clone darted out from the Black Mage King's body. At this moment, it was as if there were two Black Mage Kings simultaneously punching out wildly toward the crimson monster. F*CKU. Bang, 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 bang. Each punch brought with it a power that could destroy an entire city, producing a colorful glow in the microscopic world. The repercussions of the power swept out into the sky, bringing along a force 20 gales that swept through the entire imperial capital. Almost all the buildings were razed to the ground. However, no matter how many attacks lashed out onto the crimson monster's body, it was like a metal hammer striking onto a steel plate. There was no effect at all. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The two of them swung their fists wildly at a close distance, unleashing explosive powers that seemed to tear the world apart as they smashed fiercely onto the imperial capital's ground. A loud rumble rang out, and it was as if the mountain range, which was the world's backbone, had been smashed apart with a single blow. The entire imperial capital's ground instantly shattered into pieces, and countless buildings, fragments, and sand soared into the sky. A tremendous amount of soil sank as the two of them collided. With a single attack, the world was overturned. Darkness aberrations' gaze narrowed, and streams of dark matter suddenly appeared before him, forming a layer of black protective barrier. Streams of shock waves collided fiercely against the dark matter, but the impact was instantly neutralized. A rumble rang out. A building rose up from the ground, smashing out horizontally like a huge hammer that was used to attack a city. The entire impact was blocked by the dark matter, but it was unable to advance in the slightest. At the next moment, It was wiped out by the second wave of gales that rushed over and turned into countless dregs. Yushan darted about amidst the gales while covered in blood. Clade and Yu Xianru, who were both in his hands, were covered in 5 different colors, and he was unable to see the dark world clearly. Finally, he arrived behind the dark matter, avoiding being torn into pieces by the repercussions of the battle between the two of them. At the next moment, Charlot also came crashing in. His right arm had been torn into pieces, and he was covered in dust and dirt. He fell to the ground the moment he came in, half dead. Death revealing heavenly eyes and darkness aberration threw a glance at them, but did not say anything. Therefore, more experts who had survived hid under darkness aberration's protection, relying on the dark matter to fend off the repercussions of the battle between the two of them. The first prince darted behind the dark matter and looked at the many buildings that were flying in the sky, colliding into the dark matter. He then looked at the several million tons of sand and debris in the sky, and a hint of a bitter smile appeared on his face. The imperial capital was completely wiped out in the instant the two experts exchanged blows. Right now, the entire ground was trembling incessantly as if there were 2 huge, prehistoric dragons fighting it out underground. A tremendous amount of sand and soil soared into the sky like a volcanic eruption. Occasionally, 1 or 2 pieces of soil that were the size of small mountains would soar into the sky with a bang and then be torn into pieces by the strong gales. It's too terrifying. Is this the Black Mage King's power? The first prince looked at the battlefield that seemed as if the world had been overturned. He let out a deep sigh and said, "No matter who wins this battle, the history of the entire world will probably have to be rewritten." In the distant horizon, Fang Xingchen looked at the battlefield with a grim countenance. Having reached the divine level, he continued to send his marshal while sweeping out toward the battlefield deep underground. Right now, both parties had fought their way to a depth of over 30 kilometers underground. Each time, they exchanged blows. Even if they only used their powers on the microscopic world, the repercussions of their attacks would still continue to create great earthquakes, shattering the surface of the entire imperial capital over and over again, completely changing the landscape. However, from the beginning to the end, the Crimson Monster had been suppressing the Black Mage King. Under the repeated heavy punches, the Black Mage King's body would shatter into countless amounts of black fog. The Black Mage King's body was as tough as a neutron star in the universe. No matter what kind of attack it was unable to leave any marks on its extremely strong body. Chapter 817. This evil god tribe's warrior is too terrifying. Fang Xingchen had never seen the Black Mage King being forced into such a state. Even after using the Black Clone, the Black Mage King was still unable to do anything to it. Underground, the battle situation was even worse than Fang Xingchen had imagined. Boom! With a single punch, the Black Mage King's head exploded, and the soil within a range of 1 kilometer was vaporized into ashes. Simultaneously, the Black Mage King's fists and the Black Clone's fists smashed out like 4 steel pillars, lashing onto the evil god tribe's warrior's waist, back, and thighs. However, the evil god tribe's warrior did not even manage to make it take half a step back. It was once again hit in the chest by the evil god tribe's warrior's elbow. It was as if several hundred nuclear bombs had been ignited in an instant, and a dazzling light shot into the sky. Half of the Black Mage King's body was also smashed off by this elbow, and the ground caved in once again. Fight back! A punch smashed onto the evil god tribe's warrior's face, but there was no reaction. On the contrary, the Black Mage King's shoulder was once again torn off and swallowed into its stomach. "Didn't you want to eat me up?" With a rumble, the 2 fists collided, and the Black Mage King's reassembled body once again shattered into pieces. Meanwhile, the evil god tribe's warrior continued to chase after the Black Mage King without any injuries. What? With a rumble, the Black Mage King was grabbed by the head and smashed through the ground, creating an underground tunnel that was over 10 kilometers long. What? Bang, 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 bang. The evil god tribe's warrior sat on the Black Mage King's face, throwing punch after punch. It was as if a myriad of meteors were flashing incessantly on the Black Mage King's body. "Why aren't you fighting back?" The Black Mage King's fists were twisted into dust, and the evil god tribe's warrior grabbed his head and flung him out. The Black Mage King smashed into the rocks, breaking through several kilometers of tremendous force, and his entire body was covered in cracks. Throughout the entire process, the Black Clone kept on circling around the evil god tribe's warrior at light speed. Its fists, legs, fingers, palms, elbows, and knees kept on smashing out like mini nuclear bombs. However, other than sending dust flying into the air from the repercussions, it did not cause any damage to the evil god tribe's warrior. It only caused the enraged intent all over its body to swell incessantly, and its entire body became increasingly scarlet red. It was like a demonic comet sweeping to and fro in the underground. The Black Clone punched the evil god tribe's warrior's chest once again, and a white glow burst out from its eyes. Crimson enraged intent soared into the sky, leaving behind many light ribbons that were over 1,000 meters long. "Why aren't you fighting back?" "That's why I said you." 4. "What? Is that so?" "No. Return. Hand." Every single word carried a surging will that swept through the space, causing countless experts to bleed from their 7 apertures and their minds to ring. Simultaneously, the evil god tribe's warrior raised its hands up high and then smashed them fiercely onto the ground. All the microscopic particles were instantly repelled, and a silent vacuum environment extended out in all directions with the evil god tribe's warrior as the center. Then amidst the silence, the ground started to evaporate, and violent shock waves soared into the sky, destroying the land several tens of kilometers above the evil god tribe's warrior's head. It was like a light pillar piercing into the sky, wiping out everything in its path. The land that weighed several 100 million tons was instantly vaporized by the evil god tribe's warrior. The shock waves tore through the land and soared into the sky. The countenances of death-revealing heavenly eyes and darkness aberration changed, and the land under their feet flew up into the sky from the layers of stacking powers. As the land kept on collapsing in the process of flying up, they would also be encompassed by the shock waves at the next moment. Darkness aberration glared, and a tremendous amount of dark matter was immediately produced under his feet, covering the ground. Finally, when the ground completely collapsed, the dark matter covered up most of the space, completely negating the shock waves that surged up from underground. Therefore, a large piece of dark matter, which was in front and under the feet, floated in midair. Several hundred experts like Yushan, Charlot, and the first prince had on it. They looked at the huge, bottomless hole that had been dug out for several tens of kilometers. All of them revealed astonished expressions. How terrifying was the power required to completely destroy such a tremendous amount of mass with a single attack? And this was just the repercussions. If this attack had been aimed at Miracle Road, it might have been able to split the entire land into 2. Countless people drew in a cold gasp. Yushan's countenance was grim as he said, "Thankfully, we're not on land. If this battle were to take place on land..." Charlot shook his head. "Then 99% of the humans in the Empire would probably be dead." Yushinru's and Clade's countenances were grim as they looked at the light that kept on lighting up underground. Their eyes were filled with horror. The battle before them had far surpassed their imagination. The first prince's countenance was the most grim. No one would be able to remain calm after seeing their home being completely smashed into dust. The Krieg royal family. Many of his family members, friends, and even teachers and classmates were still in the imperial capital. Now all of them had died from this attack. "Kill that monster. No matter what, we must kill him. Otherwise, all of humanity will be finished." In the distant horizon, the Gold Mage King frowned. "This isn't good," Fong Xingchen said anxiously. "Sir, should we go and help Master? If this goes on, let's wait and see." The Gold Mage King was a little hesitant. He did not wish to fight against such a monster. Just then, accompanied by an extremely excited Bello, A blood-red figure cut across the atmosphere, creating strong gales that blew away all the sand and dust in the sky. The Red Mage King pierced into the ground like a red laser beam, smashing into the crimson monster's back. "I'll eat you up." As the Red Mage King rammed into the evil god tribe's warrior, its body paused slightly. At the next moment, the Red Mage King hugged the evil god tribe's warrior's body tightly from the back. Then he opened his mouth and bit down on its neck. Simultaneously, the Black Mage King recovered once again. Together with the Black Clone, violent powers tore through the vacuum and smashed into the Red Mage King's body in the microscopic world. World Annihilation Black Hole Wave. Two gushes of powers that were of the same size, but headed in opposite directions, were unleashed simultaneously in the microscopic world by the Black Mage King and his clone. They turned into a spiral-shaped suction force that sucked in all the physical particles in the surroundings toward the center of the power. Simultaneously, the gravitational force brought about by the evil god tribe's warriors' mass was also distorted, all of them turning in the opposite direction toward its center of gravity. This was an unparalleled martial art driven by the Black Mage King's martial will and microscopic realm. It could convert all the powers into the land's astral powers and explode them with a single attack. It could even trigger the astral gravitational force in the target's body, instantly destroying the other party's gravitational structure. Chapter 8:18. This was an attack that could instantly crush an entire city into a rock the size of a thumb. It was an attack with astonishing destructive prowess. However, it was just right for the evil god tribe's warrior. It was because the evil god tribe's warrior had an extremely high density and quality. At this moment, when the Black Mage King detonated the astral gravity in its body, the balance of its body was immediately broken. It was as if the Black Mage King was drawing out the powers in its body to attack it. The surrounding light rays instantly turned into spiral-shaped distortions. At this moment, the evil god tribe's warrior seemed to have turned into a huge black hole, crazily engulfing everything in the surroundings, including itself. Its limbs, tail, and even its enraged intent were all sucked onto its body. It kept on being pressed down by invisible powers and crushed by the Earth's astral powers, turning into a sphere that kept on shrinking. At the sight of this scene, the eyes of many experts lit up. "It's a success." Charlot smiled. "It's going to be beaten to death." Yushan's gaze suddenly lit up. Has it succeeded? It seems like it's really unable to go up against this power. Standing on the floating dark matter, several hundred experts cheered. "It's a success. Kill this monster. We're saved." Death revealing heavenly eyes and darkness aberration exchange a glance, seeming to heave a sigh of relief at this moment. Although the Mage Association was the Church's mortal enemy, their victory was still better than the evil god's clone surviving. They had depleted the battle prowess of 2 Guardian Kings and 2 Mage Kings before finally achieving victory. If that monster were to break out alive, who knew what would happen? After all, evil gods were the greatest danger to the entire world. In the horizon, Fang Xingchen also heaved a sigh of relief. The battle earlier had been too dangerous. To think that the Black Mage King, who was a Tier 5 divine level expert, had not been able to put up any resistance before the evil god tribe's warrior. Fang Xingchen was terrified and even had the urge to turn and flee. These members of the evil god tribe from another world are too terrifying. If a single evil god tribe's warrior is already this powerful, then how terrifying would their army be when the entire evil god tribe rules over the universe and destroys countless worlds? And how terrifying would the red evil god, who rules over the entire evil god tribe, whose thoughts traverse countless space-time and sleep in the depths of the Red River, be? At this moment, Fang Xingchen felt extreme fear toward the entire evil god tribe. However, looking at the battle situation before him, Fang Xingchen smiled again. However, mages are able to make use of the evil god's powers. This time around, Master was even able to engulf an evil god tribe's warrior. With this, he would be able to get ahead of the other experts. Although the evil gods are powerful, it doesn't mean that we don't have the ability to resist or even surpass them. Today's battle will be the first page in human history. Fang Xingqian's eyes shone with excitement and confidence. He felt as if he was at the point of the revolution of the steam engine, the point where mankind had landed on the moon. The Gold Mage King also nodded slowly, revealing an extremely curious expression toward the evil god tribe's warrior. If I can get this evil god tribe's warrior to cooperate with me in some research, I might even be able to understand its body structure and the principles behind its power circulation. Just as everyone thought that the outcome of the battle had been decided, the evil god tribe's warrior broke into a savage smile. Very good. Ints, you guys have really infuriated me. As streams of crimson glow gushed out from the evil god tribe's warrior's body, the enraged intent circulated crazily in a way that had never been displayed before. Roar! The evil god tribe's warrior's limbs and tail slowly opened up once again, breaking through the world annihilation black hole wave's restraints. The enraged intent turned into a set of crimson-red armor that appeared on the surface of the evil god tribe's warrior's body, seeming to block all the attacks for it. Mutated martial style, blood divine armor. The voice that was contained in the will reverberated in the Black Mage King's mind, letting him know the name of this move. In an instant, the Black Mage King also reacted. From the start of the battle until now, even after using its battle form, this evil god tribe's warrior had only fought head-on with brute force. It had never performed any martial arts or moves. However, right now, it was starting to perform the evil god tribe's martial arts. As this move was performed, the evil god tribe's warrior immediately unleashed an unparalleled aura. Retreat quickly. Information currents burst out, and the Black Mage King turned into a beam of light and retreated. However, the Red Mage King was a step too late, and his entire head was instantly covered by the evil god tribe's warrior's palm. Mutated martial style, divine shattering chaotic strike. Chaotic divine light burst out from the evil god tribe's warrior's palm, and a punch that could shatter space burst out in the form of shock waves. In that instant, a chaotic light path that was over 100 kilometers long was drawn out. Everything that the light path collided with along the way was completely shattered and then disappeared together with the shattered space. The Red Mage King's upper body was also completely shattered by this attack. Just as he was about to grow back, the evil god tribe's warrior had already stretched out its left and right palms. The enraged intent dragged out a trail of flames that was over 1,000 meters long behind its palms. As the warrior put its palms together, a myriad of red light smashed out fiercely toward the Red Mage King. Mutated martial style, heaven and earth furnace. This was a spatial suppression that used mass to stretch out space-time. Before it even got close, the Red Mage King's body was crushed, and his will let out an agonizing cry. How sturdy was the Red Mage King's body? The Gold Mage King, Fang Xingqian, and the First Prince knew very well that the Red Mage King was an existence that even Fang Xingjian found hard to deal with. However, at this moment, the Red Mage King, who could withstand microscopic attacks, and who even Tier 5 divine level experts would find it hard to kill, was killed with a single attack. Seeing that the Red Mage King had been crushed into microscopic particles with a single attack, and that even his martial will's waves had completely dissipated, everyone present wore horrified expressions. At the next instant, the Black Clone punched the back of the evil god tribe's warrior's head. However, the terrifying power was completely fended off by the blood-colored armor, and the Black Clone was unable to get close to the evil god tribe's body at all. At the sight of this scene, the Black Mage King's heart sank incessantly, and his expression turned extremely grim. The evil god tribe's warrior smiled and said, "A mongrel dog that you're rearing? What do you do if I kill him now? If I were to kill you now?" Boom! With a collision, the Black Mage King was sent flying into the sky. Half of his body was shattered, and he could not even retaliate. What can you even do? One of the evil god tribe's warrior's legs was raised high and then stomped down fiercely. The The evil god tribe's warrior stepped on the Black Mage King's back and descended from the sky once again, crashing into the ground. Rumble. The entire land started to undulate like waves. At the sight of this scene, everyone's hearts sank. This monster's strength was like the deep ocean, and as it revealed its strength bit by bit, everyone felt increasingly desperate. 2 Guardian Kings and 2 Mage Kings have been defeated. Who else could stop it? Despair rose in everyone's hearts. It's over. There's no one who can defeat it. To think that this isn't even its full power? Yushan's countenance turned pale, Charlot's body was trembling, and the first prince's countenance was so grim that he could not say a word. Fang Xingqian's legs kept on trembling, and his will was filled with fear. It was as if there was a voice telling him to escape. As a red-robed mage who cultivated red faction black magic, they had to keep on imitating the evil god tribe's warrior's body structure. However, when facing the real evil god tribe's warrior and seeing the power it displayed that brought one to despair, Fang Xingqian felt a terror, as if he was facing an abyss. It was as if he was in darkness and kept on falling down, unable to grab onto anything. The Gold Mage King's eyes narrowed slightly, and he was prepared to escape. Darkness Aberration's countenance was grim, as he pointed out, and a hint of dark matter appeared before the evil god tribe's warrior, wanting to fend off its attack. At this moment, even he, who was a Guardian King, wanted to help the Black Mage King. It was because this concerned the survival of mankind. If this monster were to be allowed to leave, even if he managed to suppress it in the end, there would not be many people left alive in this world. However, the dark matter merely formed an area that was the size of a palm, and then stopped changing. It was because the evil god tribe's warrior had let go of the heavily injured Black Mage King and turned to look at Darkness Aberration, who was in the sky. Oh, I almost forgot about you guys. At the next instant, the evil god tribe's warrior charged out abruptly and slapped out an ordinary palm onto Darkness Aberration's face. Before anyone could react, the evil god tribe's warrior had already smashed its body into dust. This attack left Darkness Aberration half dead, and he seemed to be unable to continue maintaining the existence of the dark matter. He turned into light spots that filled up the sky and dissipated. Even his conjured physique was regenerating very slowly. The dark matter floating in the sky instantly disappeared, and many experts landed on the ground. However, most of the people present were conferred knights, demigods, and even divine-level experts. A height of several hundred meters was nothing to them. After everyone landed on the ground, they looked nervously toward the sky, looking at the figure of the evil god tribe's warrior. However, at the next moment, they saw a shocking scene. The evil god tribe's warrior seemed to be stunned for a moment. Then at the next moment, it left behind a series of afterimages, compressed space, and retreated explosively over 10 kilometers at superluminal speed. Li, En, Ping. The evil god tribe's warrior trembled all over, and its enraged intent continued to soar. It was as if a flaming cloud had engulfed the sky, once again unleashing an even stronger aura. You've sealed us up for 100,000 years. Is this still not enough? Chapter 819. In the Boundless Sea of Flowers. Li Shuanghua looked at Fang Xingjian, revealing a complicated expression. The professor's words rang out in her mind once again. His learning ability is too strong. Moreover, he has an almost endless desire to learn. In layman's terms, he will learn whatever he sees. He is like a black hole. He will swallow everything he sees and then turn into that thing. We mustn't let him see things like violence and blood. It's best if we can send him to an ordinary environment and let him be surrounded by ordinary people. This way, the risk of him losing control can be minimized. This way, we should be able to create a cage for him, even if it's just a paper cage. Don't try to bind him with emotions. He has no emotions. Everything is an illusion. When Li Shuanghua regained her senses, the 5-year-old boy before her had already grabbed onto her sleeves. His eyes were wide open, and he said innocently, "Grandmother, what martial arts are you going to teach me today?" Today, Li Shuanghua lowered her gaze, squatted down, and slowly hugged Fang Xingzhan's small body. From today onwards, we won't practice martial arts. Not practicing martial arts? The little boy smiled. Then what are we going to do? Close your eyes. Li Shuanghua hugged the boy and slowly stroked the back of the boy's head with one hand. A green glow flashed in her injured eyes. Sleep. You'll be fine after a nap. A short while later, the corners of the little boy's lips curled up into a sweet smile, and he slowly fell into the sea of flowers. Li Shuanghua turned to leave. A man in a suit walked up to her side, staying half a step behind as he listened to the instructions of this top-notch expert. From today onwards, try not to let him come into contact with any extraordinary powers. Transfer him out of the Magic Prince Academy and send him to the most ordinary school. I want all his teachers, classmates, and friends to be the most ordinary ones. Transfer all those with outstanding results. Transfer all those who discover outstanding talents. Transfer all those who are too fierce. Transfer all those who come into contact with extraordinary powers. Transfer all those who come into contact with extraordinary powers. I want them to all be ordinary people who are weak, kind, and timid. They must be as ordinary as they can be. Li Shuanghua's gaze became extremely deep and dark as she looked in the direction of Demonic City. The internal structure of the Fang clan needs to be changed as well. Seal off all information related to Xingzhan. Prohibit the other members of the Fang clan from coming into contact with him. Seeing the hesitation in the other's eyes, Li Shuanghua lightly said, "Don't worry, I'll set an example." In an instant, the entire sky darkened, and the colorful sea of flowers withered in an instant, turning into fragments that floated into the sky. Fang Xingzhan slowly walked in front of the sleeping boy. Looking at the boy's serene face, his eyes flashed. No one knew what he was thinking. My memories? Is this the loneliness that has always been hidden in my heart? Did I lure them out? At that moment, a crack appeared in the dark sky. In the next moment, more and more cracks appeared. In an instant, the entire sky was densely packed. Kacha kacha kacha. Accompanied by continuous cracking sounds, the entire sky completely shattered in an instant. As darkness aberration was heavily injured, the dark matter he created could no longer be sustained. All the dark matter instantly collapsed, releasing Fang Xingzhan, who had been captured earlier. Standing in midair, Fang Xingzhan's gaze was extremely calm as he looked at the imperial capital, which had completely turned into a deep abyss. He turned his eyes and looked in the direction of the evil god tribe's warrior. That evil god tribe's warrior seemed to be stunned for a moment. Then at the next moment, leaving behind a series of afterimages, it compressed the space and retreated explosively over 10 kilometers at superluminal speed. Li and Ping. The evil god tribe's warrior trembled all over, and its enraged intent continued to soar. It was as if a flaming cloud had engulfed the sky, once again unleashing an even stronger aura. You've sealed us for 100,000 years. Is this still not enough? Everyone looked at this scene in astonishment. It was not just because the evil god tribe's warrior had displayed an even stronger power. It was also because of the trembling in its voice. Ever since the start of the battle, this evil god tribe's warrior had never seemed so nervous or afraid. Yushan looked at the scene in the sky in astonishment. What's going on? Who is Li Anping? The first prince was also stunned for a moment. He stared at the evil god tribe's warrior and Fang Xingzhan in surprise, his gaze filled with doubt. They know each other? Darkness aberration slowly regained his original appearance and once again gathered together with death-revealing heavenly eyes. Their gazes only briefly swept toward the evil god tribe's warrior before turning to look at Fang Xingzhan. Right now, Fang Xingzhan's clothes were as white as snow, and his long black hair was let down casually. His gaze was extremely cold, and there was an additional indescribable disposition on him. There seems to be some changes. Could it be that he has awakened some kind of divine art? But even so, will he be a match for that evil god's clone? The two guardian kings could see the worry in each other's eyes. The Black Mage King also looked at the two people in the sky with a grim countenance, and then silently retreated. He kept on calculating in his heart, "It's time to give up on this place. This evil god tribe's warrior's strength far surpasses our expectations. We can't fight it head-on." In the distance, the Gold Mage King and Fong Xingchen also looked at the situation before them with puzzlement. In the sky, the evil god tribe's warrior was no longer as agitated as it was at the beginning. Its gaze was fixed on Fong Xingjian, and a hint of doubt flashed in its eyes. His disposition and appearance are very similar, but he shouldn't be this weak. At the next moment, it was swept out across the sky along with the information, heading toward Fong Xingjian's location. "Who on earth are you?" Faced with the evil god tribe's question, Fong Xingjian did not say anything. Instead, he lifted his finger gently, and a spot of sword light lit up at his fingertip. At the next moment, it turned into streams of gentle light that scattered out. There was no offensive nature, just like gentle sunlight scattering down on the mortal world. At the beginning, the evil god tribe's warrior and the many experts were extremely guarded against it. However, a short moment later, they felt that this light seemed to be just ordinary light that was completely harmless. What is he doing? Illuminating? What's the use of this light? Looking at the sky that seemed to have lit up like a sun, scattering a myriad of gentle rays of light across the entire ritual, everyone felt puzzled. They could not understand what Fong Xingjian was doing. No one knew that when the light scattered across the ritual, the entire world was already different. Trying to act mysterious, the evil god tribe's warrior let out a cold snort. With a flash, it crossed over 10 kilometers of space at superluminal speed and lashed out a fierce punch onto Fong Xingjian's face. The space shattered, and chaotic light lit up. Fong Xingjian's figure also shattered and disappeared. Chapter 820. Just as everyone thought that Fong Xingjian had been crushed to death by the evil god tribe's warrior with a single punch, a pure white palm was already gently placed on the evil god tribe's warrior's shoulder. Fong Xingjian's mouth was next to the evil god tribe's warrior's ear, and he said softly, "You seem to be very afraid of me." "Afraid of you?" The evil god tribe's warrior let out a cold laugh, turned around, and punched out. Its superluminal fist could shatter any physical matter or even space. Even if it were to be engulfed by the Black Mage King, it would still be able to break out from its body with this attack. This was a powerful and ultimate technique that could only be performed after one had a great understanding of the space-time structure, the Earth, and the astral forces. It was a move that no one in the entire miracle world had been able to perform. However, right now, a pure white palm was gently grabbing onto its fist. Fong Xingjian's voice once again rang out softly in its ear. "Let me see what you're afraid of." In that instant, the evil god tribe's warrior's terror seemed to have been triggered. Its body trembled fiercely as it looked at the man who had easily grabbed onto its fist. It looked at the demonic and godlike figure that was wrapped up in a myriad of silver light that once again appeared before it. An extremely terrified expression appeared in its eyes. "Li Anping, it's really you." Right now, the evil god tribe's warrior seemed to be agitated, infuriated, and terrified. Its entire body was trembling as if it had met its natural enemy. The enraged intent that encompassed its entire body burst out fiercely once again, and streams of crimson-red flames soared into the sky. It was as if a solar flare had erupted. "Li Anping, I'm not afraid of you. You've sealed us for 100,000 years, but aren't we still out now?" Roar. Mutated martial style. 9 lifetimes vengeance, slaying demonic god. The entire space where the ritual was seemed to tremble intensely. Wherever the enraged intent passed by, the layers of space would shatter incessantly. The end of each stream of flames seemed to have turned into a crimson-red fist. At the next moment, a myriad of fists smashed out fiercely toward where Fong Xingjian was. Bang! Bang! Bang, 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 bang. Wherever one's eyes could see, the entire space was covered by densely packed fist shadows. The entire space was like a rag that was being torn apart again and again. Lee and level. The evil god tribe's warrior opened its mouth abruptly, and crimson red light gushed out from its mouth. It was the power bestowed by the red evil god, a terrifying prowess that could wipe out Earth in an instant. Due to its previous meritorious service, the evil god tribe's warrior had been bestowed this power into its body. Right now, it did not hold back at all. At this moment, the evil god tribe's warrior was filled with a spirit of facing death with equanimity. It was like a warrior who clearly knew that he was no match for his opponent, but still wanted to fight with his life on the line, hoping to obtain a slim chance of survival. He attacked with all his might, forgetting about life and death. The attack bestowed by the red evil god was his greatest trump card. The crimson light instantly covered Fong Xingjian and the sky behind him, instantly turning half of the space where the ritual took place into chaos. However, under the horrified gaze of the evil god tribe's warrior, regardless of whether it was the myriad of light-speed fists or the final attack bestowed by the red evil god, they were all unable to do anything to that figure. The figure that was encompassed by the silver light was like an ancient existence that had existed before the world had been created. Regardless of whether the universe was destroyed, space was shattered, or everything in the world was withering, they were all unable to do anything to him. In everyone's eyes, Fong Xingjian was still Fong Xingjian. There was no man who was covered in silver light. This was the fear that the evil god tribe's warrior felt. In everyone's eyes, the entire process was just that the evil god tribe's warrior had suddenly attacked. Moreover, the moment it attacked, its power was several tens or even over 100 times stronger than before. It instantly shattered space, tore apart the sky, and turned half of the small world into chaos. The four mage kings had joined forces to drag the entire imperial capital into a small world that was independent from Miracle World. This small world was a small world with a range of several tens of kilometers. This was a space that the mage kings had unintentionally found several thousand years ago. It was unknown whether it had been opened up by some powerful existence in the multivariate universe, but it was later abandoned. After the Mage Association discovered it, they had only treated this place as a place of refuge or a warehouse. This time around, for the sake of the evil god summoning ritual, they had set the summoning location here. They could attack or retreat as they pleased. Even if they were to fail, they could still retreat back to Miracle World. However, at this moment, under the violent attacks of the evil god tribe's warrior, half of the space on the side where Fong Xingjian was torn into dust. It was like half of a painting had been torn off. Half of the space from the ground to the ground had disappeared, and the other half was in a state of chaos. There was no space, no time, and it was as if there was no matter at all. The half that was in perfect condition also started to break down and dissipate from the moment it came into contact with the chaos, once again returning to chaos. In almost an instant, the entire small world had been destroyed. How terrifying was this power? However, if the power displayed by the evil god tribe's warrior could be said to have astonished everyone, then what Fong Xingjian had displayed was inexplicable. It was because right before everyone's eyes, Fong Xingjian received the other party's attacks unscathed, allowing the several 10,000 superluminal punches to hit his body, allowing the crimson light cannons to drown his body. His body was like the most perfect conjured physique in the world. Every single fiber of his body emitted a faint fluorescent light, and no matter what kind of attacks landed on his body, they were unable to shake his body in the slightest. Even the destruction of the world and the shattering of space were unable to harm his conjured physique. He just stood there in the chaotic space, and all the chaos was unable to invade his body in the slightest. At the next moment, something even more unacceptable happened. Fong Xingjian stretched out his hand and then pressed down with a backhand. The chaos stabilized and started to turn back into space-time. It was as if time had been reversed. First, all the chaotic energies turned back into space-time, and then all the microscopic particles once again formed streets, cities, and remnants. With a flip of his hand, it was as if the wind, water, earth, and fire had been stabilized, and the small world once again returned to its original state. Yushan looked at Feng Xingjian, who was in the sky, in a daze. His mind was completely blank. Charlot, Yushinru, and Clade, who were next to him, all had their eyes wide open as if they were going to pop out from their sockets. Impossible. The first prince let out an explosive bellow, looking at the miracle in the sky in disbelief. He bellowed in his heart, "Impossible! How can Feng Xingjian be this strong? Even tier 7 or 8 of the divine level shouldn't be this strong." He appeared to be in a deranged and dazed state, as if his will had been completely crushed. He dropped to the ground with a dazed look in his eyes. The Black Mage King glared furiously at Feng Xingjian, who was in the sky. He could not help but curse. F***CK, Feng Xingqian's mouth was agape, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. The Gold Mage King was the only one who frowned, and there seemed to be a perplexed look in his eyes. Chapter 8:21. The evil god tribe's warrior revealed a look of despair, and even the fury in its heart seemed to have been doused with cold water. The enraged intent that soared into the sky started to shrink and soften. Looking at the majestic figure amidst the silver light, its raised fist kept on trembling, finding it hard to even clench it tightly. At this moment, the courage it had summoned up in a moment of rashness completely dissipated. Many legends, histories, and myths appeared in its mind, telling it that the other party was undefeatable. "It's impossible. I really can't do it. Defeating such an existence. It's really impossible for me to do it." Its expression was one of endless regret. It regretted leaving the Red River, regretted coming to this world. Looking at the evil god tribe's warrior, Feng Xingjian flipped his palm once again and gently pushed out a palm toward it. "Mere ant, why are you resisting?" At the next moment, a huge palm descended from the sky. No, it did not descend from the sky. Instead, it descended from beyond the sky. As the palm advanced forward, the space distorted like a thin membrane. This scene looked as if the entire small world was inside a balloon, and the huge palm was outside the balloon. It descended and grabbed the entire small world, using an unimaginably tremendous power to crush the entire small world, compressing the space in the small world until it kept on deforming. Each of the 5 fingers was like a heaven-supporting pillar descending from beyond the sky, compressing the entire small world until it was like a plastic membrane. The space the small world was in seemed to have started to collapse. He wants to destroy the entire small world. Oh my God, stop it. A commotion immediately broke out among the crowd. Countless people were scared out of their wits by this world-shaking and world-destroying attack. The evil god tribe's warrior looked at everything in a daze. It felt as if it was a bug in the other party's palm, being squeezed in the palm. It could not see any chance of escaping. It just stood there in void space in a daze, looking at the huge palm that covered the entire world and the small space where the ritual was in its palm, descending from beyond the sky. Its body started to tremble, and great terror kept on pounding at its heart, causing it to shiver from head to toe. It wanted to resist, wanting to fight to the death at the very last moment. However, the power displayed by the other party, as well as the other party's identity, seemed to possess a magical power that lingered in his heart, causing him to be unable to unleash another attack. He was unable to summon the slightest will to resist. He clenched his fists tightly and seemed to have fallen into a struggle. Looking at the evil god tribe's warrior before him, Feng Xingjian crossed his arms before his chest and stood amidst the silver light. He said calmly, "Aren't you going to run, little lizard?" A hint of fury flashed in the eyes of the evil god tribe's warrior. Its body trembled slightly, and at the next moment, it retreated explosively at superluminal speed. The direction in which he retreated was the direction of the blood-colored vortex. The entrance to the Red River was the entrance to this world. As the Gold Mage King closed the divine country, he also fell into the space where the small world was. After retreating explosively, he instantly entered the blood-colored vortex and was about to dive into the Red River to escape. However, when his body was halfway in, he suddenly stopped. He turned his head to look at the silver figure in the sky, and suddenly said, "I was almost fooled by you. If Liamping wants to kill me, it'll only take him a single thought. How can he possibly take so long? Moreover, from the beginning to the end, there aren't any injuries on my body at all. I haven't even depleted any energy. With your ability, you won't be able to change the situation in other people's bodies, right?" As he said that, the corners of his lips curled up into a hint of a brutal smile. "Lad, no matter who you are, you're dead meat." At the next moment, with a dash, he once again appeared before Feng Xingjian. However, as he struck out a punch, the Feng Xingjian before him disappeared like an illusion. "Are you sure that you haven't been fooled?" "What?" The evil god tribe's warrior frowned. At the next moment, there was no longer any space in the imperial capital or Feng Xingjian's silhouette. Wherever it looked, there was only a seething sea of blood. It had clearly returned to the red river that passed through countless universes and spaces. When did I return? Damn it! It turned and saw that the door that it had opened earlier had already closed up. It dashed over abruptly, but even with superluminal speed, it was only able to flash past the afterimages of the blood-colored vortex. In the end, it could only let out a deafening bellow toward the spot where the blood-colored vortex had been. "I'm going to kill you. 100 years. 1,000 years. 10,000 years. No matter how long it takes, I'll definitely find you, find the world you're in, and kill you completely. I'll destroy your world completely." Under everyone's gaze, a huge palm came from beyond the heavens, grabbing hold of the entire small world. Simultaneously, a voice rang out in the minds of the Black Mage King and the Gold Mage King. "Close the entrance to that blood-colored vortex. I'm going to close the door and beat up the dogs." The countenances of the two Mage Kings froze. Although their eyes were still filled with surprise and bewilderment, Feng Xingjian's prowess was far too great right now. Although the two of them frowned, they still did as Feng Xingjian said and closed the entrance to the blood-colored vortex. By then, the real evil God Tribe's warrior had already barged into the Red River. Therefore, before the huge palm had even clenched tightly, violent powers had already arrived across space, crushing the evil God Tribe's warrior from head to toe, leaving nothing behind. Everyone who had watched this battle from the beginning to the end had the same thoughts seething in their minds at the same time. "Invincible," Yushan said in a daze. With such power, even if all the experts in the world were to join forces, they wouldn't be able to win against him. "Feng Xingjian, he's already invincible." Yu Xinru, Charlot, and the others stared at Feng Xingjian, who was in the sky. It was as if they were looking at a god in the heavens, and their eyes were filled with admiration. The first prince sat down on the ground, looking at the scene in the sky expressionlessly. Suddenly, a hint of regret flashed in his eyes. If he had known that Feng Xingjian's strength would reach such a level, how could he possibly have continued to be enemies with him? Right now, all the members of the Krieg royal family in the imperial capital had been wiped out, and he was only left with 5% of his powers. It could be said that he was filled with regret. Just then, Feng Xingjian's gaze swept toward the Black Mage King, Gold Mage King, and Feng Xingqian. "Mage Association, are you still going to put up a stubborn resistance?" The Black Mage King frowned and said in a low voice, "Feng Xingjian, since you're already so amazing, then from today onward, the people from our Mage Association will have to keep a distance from you." Although the Gold Mage King's eyes were still filled with doubt, he did not say anything. It was as if he had agreed to the Black Mage King's suggestion. Feng Xingqian's expression was distorted, and he clenched his fists tightly. However, he was unable to say a single word. The huge palm in the sky seemed to be grabbing onto his heart, and the scene of the evil God Tribe's warrior being crushed into dust was deeply engraved in his mind, causing him to be unable to summon any will to resist. Everyone turned their gazes over. Right now, under the gazes of the many experts, Feng Xingjian was already an invincible existence. Even a Mage Association was just like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. However, when they saw that Feng Xingjian had forced the Black Mage King, to raise his hands and surrender with just a single sentence, they still revealed astonishment in their eyes. However, Feng Xingjian was still not satisfied with the Black Mage King's answer. His eyes narrowed, and the sky suddenly darkened. The huge palm once again clenched tightly onto the small world, as if it would destroy the entire world at any moment. What I want isn't to retreat. What I want is to be a slave. Chapter 822. Be a slave? Hearing this, the Black Mage King was so infuriated that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Amongst the many experts present, he could be said to be the oldest and most famous. He was a top-notch character in the world from the same generation as the previous pope. He had also integrated the mages from the black, gold, and red factions, as well as the purple and azure factions. He was the person in charge of the Mage Association in name. Previously, he had lowered his head and submitted to Feng Xingjian. This was almost his limit. Even though he had submitted earlier, he was already infuriated. He had not expected that Feng Xingjian would put forth an even more overboard request. Be a slave? How impressive. The Black Mage King's eyes narrowed slightly, and there seemed to be killing intent gathering in them. However, at the thought of how impressive Feng Xingjian had been when he had killed the evil god tribe's warrior earlier, he had no choice but to hold back his displeasure. The power that Feng Xingjian displayed was too heaven-defying. Even the Black Mage King did not dare to make a move against Feng Xingjian at this moment. The Gold Mage King frowned, but he did not step out to object either. The Gold Mage King was puzzled by the earlier scene and did not understand how Feng Xingjian had managed to grasp such a level of power within such a short period of time. However, before he had absolute confidence, the Gold Mage King would not fight against Feng Xingjian head-on. However, Feng Xingjian did not plan on letting the two of them off. He did not really possess the power to destroy small worlds and crush the evil god tribe's warrior. Everything was just an effect of his illusory arts. Right now, the illusory arts that Feng Xingjian had activated through the Celestial Eradication Sword Formation had reached the microscopic level. He could create all sorts of illusions through the other party's scanning and sensing abilities. Any living creature would need to probe the outside world if they wished to sense it. Ordinary people would use their vision to reflect light, their hearing to reflect sound waves, and other means. In order to get used to various complicated environments and high-speed battles, divine-level experts were more used to using their martial will to probe the environment. Regardless of which means they used, they would need to release their sensing abilities to gather information from the surroundings. However, regardless of what kind of probing method it was, it would not be able to depart from the microscopic world reaction. Feng Xingjian could use his powers on the microscopic world to change the results of other people's perception of the world. This allowed everyone to see, hear, touch, and feel anything that Feng Xingjian wanted them to see. This kind of microscopic level illusion was very powerful, especially after Feng Xingjian awakened part of his memory and went deep into his heart. It allowed him to develop the ability to manipulate other people's emotions. But even so, such an ability was not invincible. At the very least, Feng Xingjian's current minute subtlety illusion still had two major flaws. Firstly, he couldn't interfere with how others felt about his body. This was especially so for divine-level experts who had cultivated their conjured physiques. Every single physical particle in their bodies would be under the control of their martial will. Feng Xingjian could alter the other party's perception of the outside world, because the other party wanted to release their probing methods to the outside world, but he could not alter the other party's perception of the true situation within their own bodies. The second flaw was the sudden inspirations reaction. The sudden inspiration reaction was based on a divine-level expert's perception of space-time and timelines. Unless Feng Xingjian could surpass the microscopic realm and enter the level where his powers could affect space-time, he would not be able to deceive the sudden inspiration reaction. Therefore, Feng Xingjian naturally wanted to make use of the prestige he gained from killing the evil god tribe's warrior to suppress the Black Mage King and the Black Mage King in one go. This would save him from having a repeat in the future, resulting in another great battle. Why? In an instant, the world changed, and the entire small world seemed to have flattened under the tremendous pressure. Feng Xingjian's voice kept on reverberating in the world, as if wanting to enter the depths of everyone's hearts. Are you guys unwilling? The Black Mage King gritted his teeth, and his face twitched fiercely. However, looking at the sky that was being pressed down bit by bit, the Black Mage King eventually lowered his head and said calmly, "All right then. From today onward, the entire Mage Association will be yours." After all, he was a formidable character of his generation. In terms of cultivation and endurance, there was probably no one present who would be a match for him. Moreover, to these divine-level experts, their lives and powers were still the most important. It was because as long as they were alive, there would be room for improvement and a chance for them to turn the tables. Although the Gold Mage King's countenance was grim, he nodded and said, "Since the Black Mage King has agreed, I have no objections either. From today onward, the entire Mage Association will be yours." Simultaneously, the Gold Mage King smiled coldly inwardly. Old Black is really getting more and more crafty. How can the people from the other factions agree to something like this? He understood clearly that if Feng Xingjian were to really announce that the Mage Association would be under his control, it would be equivalent to offending the mages from the other factions. After all, even the Black Mage King had only unified the mages from the Black, Red, and Gold factions. Although the mages from the other factions had been in hiding for a long time, they had their own plans. How could they possibly accept Feng Xingjian, who would be giving orders above their heads? However, the Gold Mage King was also happy about this. It would be best if both parties could get into a fight, and he and the Black Mage King would stand at the back and watch the show, figuring out Feng Xingjian's actual situation. After all, the prowess from Feng Xingjian's earlier series of actions was far too great. Before he could figure out Feng Xingjian's true strength, the Gold Mage King would not dare to fight head-on against Feng Xingjian. "All right, the two of you will follow me from now on. The Mage Association will send your people and my people to take over." Feng Xingjian naturally wanted to personally suppress these two top-notch experts. He could only keep them by his side at all times and keep using layers of illusory arts to restrain them. At the thought of this, Feng Xingjian tapped out his finger once again, and the light pursuit sword intense swept out. However, no one saw it. Without any sound or presence, two streams of green smoke came out from the Black Mage King and Gold Mage King's bodies. They flew up to Feng Xingjian and were sucked into his mouth. Feng Xingjian used illusory arts to rewrite the information the other party had received, causing him to be unable to sense the existence of an attack until he was attacked. The most important thing was that this place was a small world outside of Miracle World, and the effects of sudden inspiration were greatly weakened. Therefore, in everyone's eyes, Feng Xingjian raised his hand and beckoned. Two streams of green smoke floated out from the Black Mage King and Gold Mage King's bodies, and then he grabbed them gently. The countenances of the Black Mage King and Gold Mage King changed. They simultaneously discovered that their systems had disappeared. Systems were known as the foundation of cultivation in Miracle World. They were things that had existed for a long time, just like the sun, the sea, and the human body. To think that they had been grabbed out by Feng Xingjian. How could the two of them not be on tenterhooks? In particular, Feng Xingjian's methods, which seemed to be completely ordinary, caused their hearts to tremble. Since he was able to capture their systems, could he also silently take their lives? Chapter 823. Both the Black Mage King and the Gold Mage King's countenances immediately turned grim, and their attitudes became much more restrained. After Feng Xingjian absorbed the system, he threw a glance at his stats window. The progress bar on his stats window was currently at 2%. After absorbing True Lord Qingshan and a few other extraordinary humans from the parallel Earth, the progress bar had reached 1%. However, after absorbing several million people from the desert capital, Including the Black Mage King and the Gold Mage King today, the progress bar had only reached 2%. It seems that I'll need a system that isn't a knight system in order to gain any benefits. After giving it some thought, Feng Xingjian let go of this matter. He then said calmly, I'll temporarily keep the cultivation Dao foundation that you guys have with me. In fact, Feng Xingjian did not know how great of an effect it would have on divine level experts if they lost their systems. Even the Gold Mage King and the Black Mage King did not know. It was because no one in Miracle World had encountered such a thing before. However, although Feng Xingjian did not explain what would happen if he took away the Cultivation Dao Foundation, his actions and words were already unfathomable to everyone. They clearly thought that Feng Xingjian had some way to restrict them by snatching away their systems. The two Mage Kings exchanged a glance. They seemed to have their own understanding of this unfathomable method. After taking in the two Mage Kings for now, Feng Xingjian turned his gaze toward death-revealing heavenly eyes and darkness aberration. Looking at Feng Xingjian's gaze, death-revealing heavenly eyes said coldly, Blasphemer, although you've killed the evil god's clone, you can forget about threatening us. Even if we're annihilated and our last hint of martial will is shattered, we won't surrender to you. Darkness aberration also straightened his neck, appearing as if he would rather die than submit. There was no possibility of taking in the holy sea of truth. Feng Xingjian had understood this a long time ago. One reason was that the other party was very strong and had a strong backing. Another reason was that they were religious. Therefore, Feng Xingjian had never planned on taking in the two Guardian Kings. With a sweep of his gaze, his all-conquering sword intent shot out at lightning speed, slashing toward the two Guardian Kings. Right now, death-revealing heavenly eyes and darkness aberration could be said to be at the lowest point of their lives. The consecutive battles with the evil god tribe's warriors had depleted over 90% of their powers. Even so, they were still law emperors, and their strength was not to be underestimated. Faced with Feng Xingjian's attack, the two of them clearly did not intend to sit still and wait for death. Death-revealing heavenly eyes activated his divine art once again, and two crosses appeared above his eyes. An attack that could crush everything in the world and disintegrate the four fundamental forces burst out explosively, sweeping out toward Feng Xingjian's location. Darkness aberration let out an explosive bellow, and a circle of golden martial swept out, blocking before the two of them as a defensive buffer. Simultaneously, the dark matter grew rapidly, and very soon, it turned into a huge black shield that blocked between the two of them. However, this time around, no matter how death-revealing heavenly eyes activated his divine art, the power that could disintegrate everything in the world continued to take effect. Large areas of darkness swelled up and then contracted. Countless spaces turned into gravitational singularities and were then filled up by other spaces. However, Feng Xingjian's body remained unharmed. However, the sword light that Feng Xingjian sent out also seemed to be unable to do anything to the dark matter. He doesn't seem to be as undefeatable as he appeared to be earlier. Has he depleted too much of his power in the battle with the evil god? Just as death-revealing heavenly eyes was thinking this, the dark matter before him shattered. At the next moment, Feng Xingjian, who was in the sky, was also completely engulfed by the darkness. Death-revealing heavenly eyes' divine art was completely disintegrated, and his soul was scattered. Death-revealing heavenly eyes was stunned for a moment before he broke into an elated expression at the next moment. It's a success. However, just then, Feng Xingjian's voice rang out next to his ears. Did you really succeed? Death-revealing heavenly eyes was stunned for a moment. Darkness aberration's white robe had drifted down from where Feng Xingjian, who should have been disintegrated. The dark matter in the air dissipated rapidly, and there seemed to be no longer any traces of darkness aberration in the world. There was no such thing as a battle between three people or the attack and defense of Swordlight. In the battle earlier, death-revealing heavenly eyes had been the one attacking the dark matter created by darkness aberration. The two of them had been killing each other. It was the strongest spear clashing incessantly against the strongest shield. I've always been very curious as to whether darkness aberration will be able to fend off your attacks. Now, I know the result. Your ability counters him very well. Fang, Xing, Jian. After personally killing his companion of many years, death-revealing Heavenly Eye's mind was filled with furious killing intent. His body split up abruptly and then reassembled behind Fang Xingjian at light speed. Following this, death-revealing Heavenly Eyes activated his Heavenly Eyes, and a large area of darkness engulfed Fang Xingjian's position. Then, under the compression of the surrounding space, the large area of darkness gradually shrank, eventually turning into a small black dot and disappearing. After doing all this, a hint of despair flashed on death-revealing Heavenly Eye's face. It was because before he attacked, Fang Xingjian had already used the power of the Celestial Eradication Sword formation to distort space and light rays, creating a spiral space. It was as if he had stretched out the space like pulling noodles, causing the starting point and ending point of the space to overlap. It was as if the noodles had gone one round and were connected from head to tail. Then Fang Xingjian used illusory arts to lure death-revealing Heavenly Eyes to this position, which was both the starting point and the ending point. Therefore, what death-revealing Heavenly Eyes saw was actually himself. He saw his own back through the distorted space and light rays. Therefore, the real target he saw earlier under the effects of illusory arts was Fang Xingjian. Naturally, it was also death-revealing Heavenly Eyes' own back. Death-revealing Heavenly Eyes lowered his head and looked at his own body. It was gradually engulfed by the darkness, and it continued to shrink along with the darkness. His desperate attack from earlier had ultimately landed on his own body. As a person who possessed a divine art, death-revealing Heavenly Eyes was very clear about how powerful this ability was. Looking at his own body, which was gradually shrinking along with the darkness, a hint of regret appeared on his face. The many scenes from earlier flashed in his mind. The space that had suddenly changed, the direction he was moving in had changed mysteriously, and the most bizarre exchange between himself and darkness aberration and Fang Xingjian. A hint of comprehension suddenly flashed on his face. So your ability is... At the next moment, death-revealing Heavenly Eyes turned into an extremely small dot and disappeared from the world. Both death-revealing Heavenly Eyes and darkness aberration were wiped out. These two top-notch experts at the Guardian King level had both died in his hands. In the eyes of the Black Mage King and the others, the entire battle was even simpler and even more astonishing. Death-revealing Heavenly Eyes took the initiative to activate his ability, and a large area of darkness engulfed Fang Xingjian. However, at the next moment, Fang Xingjian held it down with a finger. At the next moment, the attack was rebounded, and the darkness broke through the dark matter's blockade. Amidst agonizing cries, it engulfed both death-revealing Heavenly Eyes and darkness aberration completely. To think that death-revealing Heavenly Eyes' attack was rebounded. The Black Mage King's brows raised, and he suddenly rejoiced at his earlier decision. The Gold Mage King's pupils constricted. He could not understand how Fang Xingjian had done that earlier. Chapter 824. Fang Xingqian's gaze became even more numb. At this moment, he understood that he no longer had any hope of seeking revenge in this lifetime. However, there was still a hint of unwillingness in his heart. Both my parents died in your hands. Although I won't be able to take revenge, the Holy Sea of Truth might be able to. He kept on thinking, the church will definitely not sit by and watch the two Guardian Kings being killed. No matter what, they're the number one influence in the world that has been around for thousands or even 10,000 years. They also have over 10 Guardian Kings like death-revealing Heavenly Eyes. The others were already numb from the shock. Their mouths were agape as they fell silent. Only the first prince let out a bitter laugh and sighed. Fang Xingjian, Are you going to make an enemy out of the holy sea of truth? I'll make a trip to the church sooner or later, Feng Xingjian said. It was true that he would make a trip to the church. The Purple Mage King had brought about changes to his body, and his thoughts and heart seemed to have gone through a completely different change. Moreover, the memories that would occasionally appear in his mind made him filled with curiosity toward his past. His mother's death, the black-clothed man who had taken his mother away and bestowed him with the purple flames that had given him the world's best sword arts talent, and the black-clothed man's final warning. All the secrets seemed to be in the north, in the church. But after this matter is settled, I should return to Earth and investigate the things that happened to me when I was young before heading to the church. The thoughts in his mind did not affect Feng Xingjian's actions. He threw a glance at the first prince and said slowly, "The Krieg royal family has suffered a great blow and the imperial capital has been destroyed. The empire is in dire need of a new leader." Sweeping his gaze across everyone, Feng Xingjian said slowly, "I see that the second prince's son, Charlot, has been intelligent and virtuous since young. He has the bearing of the Holy Lord. Why don't we let him inherit the throne and rule over the empire?" Everyone fell silent. How could anyone possibly object to Feng Xingjian? The huge palm in the sky was still faintly discernible, and the two guardian kings had just exploded on the spot. At the sight of this scene, the first prince let out a cold snort inwardly. "Feng Xingjian, although you're unrivaled, our Krieg clan has been operating in the Empire's 8 regions for over 200 years. The royal family's prestige is deeply rooted in everyone's hearts. The knighthood system and the academy system have been developed for many years. How many experts in the Empire did not come from the major knight academies of the Empire? It won't be easy for you to plot against my clan's foundation in such a tyrannical manner." Which one of the people present isn't a governor, regional governor, military instructor, deacon, or other knight officials of the Empire? They have received the Empire's favor for generations. How can they possibly submit to just a few words from you? Without my cooperation, it would probably take you 3 to 5 years to take over the entire empire. However, the first prince still thought too highly of the moral integrity of everyone, especially the politicians. In the past, the loyalty and patriotism that countless people had displayed before him was only when the Krieg royal family was in a strong and prosperous state. As the saying goes, a good man chooses a tree to perch on, and when a wall is down, everyone gives it a push. This kind of thing was too easy for the imperial officials and knighted knights. The internal strife between the aristocrats and factions in the empire had always been extremely dark and despicable. For the sake of personal benefits, people would always lower their limits time and time again. Not only was there no one who objected, but the moment Feng Xingjian said this, someone even dashed out and started to speak for him. The beast god who had come from the eastern sand region abruptly stepped out and dropped to the ground. This demigod with 4 tiers of perfection was an expert who had traveled the world in order to strive for the divine level. Previously, a large part of his body had been eaten up by the evil god tribe's warriors, and he had then survived thanks to Darkness Aberration's protection. Right now, he appeared to be in an extremely miserable state. His entire body was emaciated, and his body, which had just been regenerated, seemed like it would break down at any moment. He was the first to drop to his knees and say anxiously, "Grandmaster is right." However, although the prince is wise, he's still young. Now that the Empire's core has been destroyed, we still need an expert who is well-versed in both the civil and military affairs, as well as a person who can shake the world to stabilize the country's destiny and assist the prince. That's right. Another person stepped out. This person was Charlie. Charlie could be said to be the first enemy at the level of a conferred knight that Feng Xingjian had encountered. He had once interrogated Feng Xingjian alone in Cursed Regional Academy. Back then, Feng Xingjian had merely been an apprentice and had been injured by Charlie. In the end, Charlie had been impeached and sent to the southern borders. Thereafter, he had made a deal with Feng Xingjian and imparted him with the effulgence weapon, thus avoiding the fate of being sent to the borders. In the past, Charlie had been able to suppress Feng Xingjian when he had been an apprentice. However, the current Feng Xingjian had become an existence that Charlie could only look up to. Right now, Charlie was already a level 25 conferred knight, and it had not been easy for him to survive this great calamity. For the past few years, because he had offended Feng Xingjian, he had lost almost all of his resources. This time around, the imperial capital had been destroyed, and most of the central upper echelon had died. Furthermore, Feng Xingjian had displayed abilities that could allow him to become the Empire's guardian. To Charlie, this was a great opportunity. However, he had not expected that the beast god would be one step ahead of him. Therefore, he could only be the second one to step forward. However, he did not have the time to think so much. Right now, he only wanted to make use of this opportunity to lick Feng Xingjian's boots unconditionally. On one hand, he hoped that Feng Xingjian would be able to forgive him, and on the other hand, he hoped that he would be able to take a bite out of the pie that would decide the distribution of power in the new empire. Charlie dropped to his knees and shouted loudly. In this world, only Lord Feng Xingjian can shoulder everyone's burden. The rise and fall of the world, the rise and fall of the empire will all be decided by you. Just as Charlie came out and dropped to his knees, another white-haired old man walked out. Yushan's brows twitched. Blitz, this is the Royal Knight Association's chief. The Royal Knight Association was an organization set up by the Empire's royal family to take charge of all conferred knights in the world. It could be said to be the Empire's most violent organization. Each generation's association chief was either a member of the royal family or a relative of the royal family. It was the same for this old man by the name of Blitz. His wife was a princess from the previous generation, a standard relative of the royal family. He lowered his head and said with great respect, Master Feng, please don't reject us. Now that the empire is in danger and Prince Charlot is still young, only Master Feng can become the pillar that holds up the sky and save the country from collapse. Please step forward and temporarily take on the role of the Imperial Preceptor. Only then will the Empire be free of worries. The position of the Empire's Imperial Preceptor had been abolished by the Emperor over 100 years ago, and all of the authority had been transferred to the Emperor. However, now that the Royal Knight Association's chief had brought it up, everyone responded. Many governors, regional chiefs, department heads, and National Academy senior professors all stood out, earnestly persuading Feng Xingjian to take on the role of the Imperial Preceptor. It was as if it would be the wrath of the heavens and the people if Feng Xingjian did not take on the position. When the first prince saw this scene, his countenance turned grim, and he felt great hatred. Compared to Feng Xingjian, he hated these former officials even more. Especially when he saw that even the association's chief had stepped out, he was so infuriated that he almost killed someone. Rebels and traitors, all of you are rebels. All of you deserve to die horrible deaths. Our Kree clan's empire has been destroyed by you guys just like that. Chapter 825. However, no matter how the first prince's countenance changed, there was no one who noticed the changes in his expression. To everyone, it was no longer important where the first prince was. The Krieg royal family had almost been wiped out, and Alexander was already dead. Who would care about the Krieg royal family? Moreover, everyone could tell that Feng Xingjian's future control of the empire and becoming the mastermind behind the scenes was already set in stone. After all, with the super-strong power that Feng Xingjian had displayed earlier, even if all the experts present were joined forces, they would still not be a match for Feng Xingjian with a single hand. Even if the imperial capital had not been destroyed and many of the empire's experts were still alive, or even if the Krieg royal family, the Abyss Lord, and Alexander the Great were still alive, they would still not be a match for Feng Xingjian. To everyone, the martial prowess of the two of them was no longer of the same dimension. Right now, Feng Xingjian was already invincible in everyone's eyes, just based on the method he had used to kill the evil god's clone and the two Law Kings. It was already miraculous and unfathomable. Therefore, no matter how grim the first prince's countenance was or how much he cursed in his heart, no one paid him any heed. Everyone surrounded Feng Xingjian, like stars surrounding the moon. However, Feng Xingjian's expression remained calm. He threw a glance at everyone present and said, "Since that's the case, then I won't pass on this responsibility and will temporarily take on the role of Imperial Preceptor." Although everyone was stunned for a moment, not expecting Feng Xingjian to be so direct, no one objected. Everyone's expressions paused for a moment before they nodded repeatedly in agreement. They appear to be in high spirits, not showing any signs of disappointment from the imperial capital having just been destroyed. The white-haired Knight Association's chief said happily, "With Grandmaster Feng holding down the fort in the Empire will no longer have to worry." The beast god's face was filled with joy as he shouted, "With Master Feng assisting the prince, it's really a blessing for the world and for the people." Charlie also stood up and said with a flattering expression, "Alexander is tyrannical, colluding with the foreign races to bring chaos to the world. Now that the Imperial Advisor has restored order, we are willing to die for the Imperial Advisor." When the first prince saw this scene, the fury in his heart kept on rising. He was so furious that his face turned into the shade of a pig's liver, and he kept on cursing inwardly, "Traitors! A bunch of traitors! To think that our Krieg royal family has taken care of you for so many years, but in the end, we've only taken care of a bunch of ingrates." Many green veins popped up on his forehead, and the corners of his eyes kept on twitching. Hints of blood red appeared in his eyes. Clearly, he had reached the limit of his endurance, and he was itching to draw his sword and kill Feng Xingjian immediately. However, he continued to endure it. It was because he knew that right now, he no longer had any bargaining chips to negotiate with Feng Xingjian. His power was not worth mentioning in Feng Xingjian's eyes, and whether he lived or died depended on a single thought from Feng Xingjian. If he wanted to live, he could only endure it. However, just as everyone was rejoicing, Charlot suddenly stood out and said, "Teacher, I don't wish to be the emperor." It was true that Charlot did not wish to be the emperor. He had a lazy nature and liked to have fun. Compared to managing the country and governing the world, he would rather go sightseeing, drinking, and having fun. Moreover, in the current world, only the strong had the right to speak. This was especially so after the world's metamorphosis, where demigods appeared endlessly, and even divine-level experts were no longer able to stand on their own 2 feet. Moreover, he was merely a knight apprentice. Even if he were to become the emperor, he would only be a puppet for everyone. Compared to being a puppet deep in the palace, he would rather go to the great western region and be an ordinary student, having his fate in his own hands. Charlot had just finished saying this when everyone's gazes turned toward him, and the atmosphere turned slightly cold. Yushan quickly grabbed Charlot's shoulder and said, "Are you crazy?" In his opinion, this was something that others could only wish for. Even if they followed Charlot, they would also be able to bask in some of his glory. He could not understand why Charlot was so crazy as to reject this. "If I don't want to, then I don't want to." Charlot looked at Feng Xingjian and said, "Teacher, why don't we let fourth uncle do it? Regardless of whether it's his character, abilities, or talent, he's better than me. He's much more suitable than me." However, Feng Xingjian ignored him and merely said slowly, "I'm asking you to do it. I'm not asking if you're going to do it or not." Charlot's countenance changed, and he felt a heavy pressure descend from the sky, landing on his body. His back was instantly drenched in sweat, and he felt a prickling sensation all over his body. It was as if countless swords were brushing past his skin. The atmosphere immediately froze up due to Feng Xingjian's words. The Knight Association's chief immediately stood out and tried to ease the situation. "Charlot is too young." These words were just said in a moment of rashness. "Imperial Preceptor, there's no need to take it to heart." Feng Xingjian ignored him and merely stared at Charlot, saying, "From today onward, you'll be the Empire's emperor." His tone was filled with an unquestionable tone, and he had no intention of discussing things with Charlot. However, this time around, Charlot did not dare to voice out his objections. Feng Xingjian's earlier disposition had given him a scare. In fact, if it was not because Charlot was the second prince's son, Feng Xingjian would be able to get any member of the royal family to become the emperor. Even if he got the first prince to be the emperor, it would not make much of a difference to him. Feng Xingjian merely wanted to consolidate the empire's powers, help him nurture subordinates, nurture fighters, gather resources, and increase his abilities. He even wanted to go up against the holy sea of truth. Therefore, everyone left this small world under the lead of the two mage kings and once again returned to the imperial capital. After returning to Miracle World, they saw that the original location of the imperial capital was now completely empty. All that was left was an extremely deep abyss that seemed to be telling the story of the imperial capital's original existence. Looking at this terrifying abyss once again, everyone's eyes were filled with sorrow, and their gazes toward the two mage kings became increasingly hostile. If it was not because they had wanted to carry out the evil god ritual, how could so many people have died? At the sight of this scene, the first prince's countenance was also grim. Looking at the big hole in front of him, Feng Xingjian instructed everyone to start rebuilding the imperial capital. A few minutes later, colorful light soared up into the clouds. There were many experts present, and there were over 10 demigods. There were also 4 divine-level experts: the first prince, the Black Mage King, and the Gold Mage King. The first prince was only left with less than 5% of his powers. However, the Black Mage King and the Gold Mage King were both mages, and both their powers and cultivation far surpassed that of knights of the same level. In Miracle World, experts attributed all of their powers to themselves. Not only were they strong in terms of battle prowess, but their productivity and calculative abilities were also very strong. At the level of a divine-level expert, they could single-handedly surpass the entire country's powers. Chapter 826. At the original location of the imperial capital, amidst the many martial wills, the one with the greatest prowess was the Black Mage King. Black martial will scattered out like dark clouds, instantly encompassing a range of several kilometers. At the next moment, it turned into a huge hand that could support the heavens and shot out, uprooting a huge mountain that was several tens of kilometers away and tossing it into the big hole. The Gold Mage King did not show any signs of weakness. A huge golden hand stretched out and swept a series of small hills that were higher than the horizon into the big hole. The two Magus King-level powerful beings were already powerful enough to change the world. Within a couple of minutes, they had already swept all mountains and earth, which were higher than the horizon within the area of tens of miles in radius, into the giant hole. Not only did it fill up the empty hole, but it had also turned the area within dozens of kilometers into a complete, flat plain. The battle prowess of each divine-level expert could be said to be world-shaking, and their destructive prowess could even surpass that of nuclear weapons. If they were to use this power in production, their productivity would be comparable to that of several 100,000, millions, or even 10 million people. However, most deity-level experts were busy with cultivation and would not use their strength in such a place. However, under Feng Xingjian's orders, although the Black Mage King and Gold Mage King were unwilling, they had no choice but to do so. After tidying up the ground, the Black Mage King waved his hand and grabbed a few more mountains from over 100 kilometers away. A light flashed on the Gold Mage King's body, and he turned into an astonishing rainbow that stirred up a great river that was several tens of kilometers away. Following that, all sorts of flames, lightning, and acids appeared. Combined with the resources that the two of them had gathered, they continuously produced all sorts of bricks, cement, stone pillars, marble, and other materials that met the requirements. To the Black Mage King and Gold Mage King, such a small matter was a piece of cake. Of course, with their microscopic level, they could also directly change the structure of physical particles to make some simple elemental changes and obtain what they wanted. However, there were hundreds of millions or even billions of physical particles in a cubic meter. To obtain enough materials to rebuild a city, it was too inefficient to change the physical particles and turn stone into gold. On the other hand, what they were doing now was directly refining materials based on their physical properties. They could easily achieve all kinds of high-tech effects, high temperature, sealing, cooling, and other processing methods. There were even gold mage kings who performed magic to speed up the time flow. In this way, the productivity of the two was almost comparable to the productivity of the entire United States. In just a few minutes, enough raw materials to build a city were produced. The remaining conferred knights and demigods also started to use those materials to rebuild the city. As for Feng Xingjian, he simply sent another clone to the great western continent, calling over Tyrant, Prince Philip, and the others. Just then, Lilia ran over from the distant horizon. Ever since she was saved by Feng Xingjian, she had been waiting for Feng Xingjian to appear on the flat ground outside the ceremony. It was only when Feng Xingjian and the others left the small world and returned to the imperial capital to rebuild the city that she noticed the unusual movements and rushed over. Looking at Feng Xingjian, a strange gleam flashed in Lilia's gaze. She asked worriedly, "Master, are you all right?" Although she knew that the Purple Mage King had no intention of harming Feng Xingjian, she did not know what the Purple Mage King was planning to do. Furthermore, the evil god summoning ritual this time around was fraught with danger, and there were even 4 Mage Kings taking action. This made her extremely worried about Feng Xingjian's situation. "It's fine." Feng Xingjian waved his hand and got Lilia to head over to help. Elsewhere, Tyrant and the others were divine-level experts after all, so they arrived at the imperial capital very soon. It was not just them. Feng Xingjian had also called over Lan Yu, the astral ancestor, and the blue sacred moonlight from the Xingwu region. Looking at the imperial capital, which had been destroyed, everyone revealed astonished and stunned expressions. The fourth prince sighed, looked at Feng Xingjian, and said, "Where are father and the others?" Everyone's gazes were filled with curiosity, and they were extremely concerned about the outcome of this battle. Therefore, Feng Xingjian explained everything that had happened. As they listened to Feng Xingjian's narration, everyone's expressions kept on changing. When they heard how powerful the evil god tribe's warrior was, all of them were astonished. When they heard that Feng Xingjian had defeated the evil god tribe's warrior, all of them were agitated. When they heard that the 2 Mage Kings had joined in, all of them gasped. Tyrant continued to secretly observe the 2 experts, the Black Mage King and the Gold Mage King. Back then, he had merely been a gray-robed mage, but now he had become Feng Xingjian's subordinate along with the Black Mage King and the Gold Mage King. At the thought of this, even Tyrant had a fantastical feeling. The blue sacred moonlight, the astral ancestor, Lan Yu, and the others were all astonished. The 2 Mage Kings were legendary figures, living legends. At the thought of how even experts like them had been subdued by Feng Xingjian, how could the 3 of them not be astonished? Chapter 827. Alexander had made a name for himself for several decades, dominating the empire and almost never tasted defeat. However, he had fought to a draw with Feng Xingjian previously. Now, he had even died in the evil god ritual. It was very regrettable. Countless people in the world were astonished by this news. As for the evil god's clone, not many people knew about it. However, those who knew about it were all members of the upper echelon and experts who understood mages. To them, the news of killing the evil god's clone was even more astonishing than Alexander's death. A storm was brewing within the empire's borders. Within a short period of time, many people from foreign tribes from the northern plains and eastern deserts came to the empire and started to gather information. Countless people turned their gazes toward the imperial capital. However, Feng Xingjian had made arrangements long ago, relying on the 6 divine-level experts to hold down the fort in the 6 great continents. Although there were some disturbances, they were still suppressed. As for the Mage Association's participation in the deaths of the 2 Guardian Kings, Feng Xingjian naturally concealed the news. Feng Xingjian did not even tell the 6 divine-level experts under him about the 2 Guardian Kings' deaths. The Black Mage King and Gold Mage King also sent out their clones to the Mage Association, gathering 90% of the Black, Red, and Gold faction mages to the new imperial capital. A tremendous amount of wealth, people, and all sorts of heavenly and earthly treasures were transported to the imperial capital incessantly. It was as if the Black Mage King and Gold Mage King had really submitted to Feng Xinjiang with all their hearts. From now onward, these newly arrived mages would be a part of the Empire's powers and would be stationed in the imperial capital for a long period of time. Before Feng Xinjiang had absolute confidence, he would not let them out. The news of the 2 Guardian Kings' deaths was also completely sealed off by the people who had survived in the small world. After all, there were only over 10 people who had witnessed their deaths. It was not difficult to seal off this news. Although many of the experts had witnessed Feng Xinjiang's abilities, if there was no need, they were really unwilling to go to war with a huge organization like the Holy See of Truth. After all, the Holy See of Truth was the #1 influence that had dominated the world for countless years. Who knew how many tricks they had up their sleeves? Therefore, the Beast God, Charlie, Yushan, and the others who knew about this all tried their best to hide it. They were very active in avoiding a war with the Holy See of Truth. However, Feng Xinjiang understood that this matter could not be concealed forever. As for the news of the Sorcerer Association joining the Empire, it was even more concealed. Fortunately, the capital was being rebuilt, so no one noticed the arrival of the Wizard Association. If the Holy See of Truth were to learn of this news, they might come out at any time and attack the Empire from the south. They could not tolerate the merging of the Magus Association and the Empire to the point where 2 law emperors had died in the Empire. For this, it was even possible that the 3 saints who had been in a civil war would come to an agreement and attack the south first. As for Feng Xinjiang, at least for now, Feng Xinjiang was not willing to start a war with the Holy See of Truth. He knew that there would be a battle between him and the Holy See of Truth, but not now. Guardian Emperor-level experts were too special. Not only were they very strong, but they also possessed unfathomable divine arts. To think that there were 19 such experts, and there were also the 3 saints who were above them. No one knew if they could see through Feng Xinjiang's illusory arts. Therefore, when it came to the Holy See of Truth, Feng Xinjiang wanted to drag things out for as long as he could, fighting for time to increase his strength. Therefore, the news to the outside world was that Alexander had died, the imperial capital was being rebuilt, and the evil god's clone had been killed. In the blink of an eye, 10 days passed, and the imperial capital had been rebuilt into a rough outline. This was a square-shaped city with a length and width of over 30 kilometers. As it was almost completely built by the Black Mage King and Gold Mage King, this city was filled with squares and rectangles of streets and buildings. It was filled with man-made traces. Of course, this was only the rough outline and structure. The various decorations, daily necessities, and appliances still needed to be slowly perfected. Secondly, the work of replenishing the population and rebuilding the central government was also progressing slowly. Although the imperial capital had been destroyed in Alexander and the Abyss Lord had died, with the addition of the Gold Mage King and the Black Mage King, as well as the mages from the Black, Red, and Metal factions, the Empire's national power had increased instead of decreasing. As a large number of people were brought in, the imperial capital would soon prosper once again. However, Feng Xinjiang had handed over the details to the 4th prince to manage. Right now, he was standing 10,000 meters up in the sky with the Gold Mage King and the Black Mage King, looking down at the new imperial capital on the ground. He had too many questions to ask the 2 of them. So, that thing is called the Evil God Tribe? Feng Xinjiang frowned and said, "To think that a monster like that is just a part of the tribe? That's right." The Black Mage King nodded and said, "The Evil God Tribe is a tribe born from the Red Evil God, or rather, the Red Demonic God. As for the Evil God, it's just what our world calls them." In the multivariate universe, the high-level existences who know and understand them refer to them as demonic gods. The Black Mage Kings slowly talked about the secrets of history. The Mage Association had existed in Miracle World for countless years. During each onslaught, there was no lack of experts whose abilities surpassed Tier 8 or even 9 of the Divine level. There were also quite a number of them who had reached other parallel universes, other worlds, and other planes through the 9-tiered heavens, or even some black magic. Therefore, their understanding of the multivariate universe and the evil gods far surpassed that of the other factions, clans, and royal families in Miracle World. This was the difference in their background. However, despite this, the information regarding the demonic gods was a secret among secrets. At the very least, the Gold Mage King was not too clear about this. Right now, he was also looking at the Black Mage King and listening carefully to this precious information. So, there are a total of 12 demonic gods. They correspond to the 12 evil gods. Fang Xingjian continued to ask. The Black Mage King smiled and said, "It's the 13 demonic gods." Fang Xingjian paused for a moment and immediately reacted. "You're talking about the god of universal truth?" "That's right." The Black Mage King nodded and revealed a self-mocking smile. He continued, "It's just that this god of universal truth is too powerful. Therefore, the holy sea of truth that borrows his power is able to go up against our 12 factions of mages. Based on what I know, our universe isn't the only one in the multivariate universe who can borrow their power to perform witchcraft. Many experts in the universe do the same." Hearing the Black Mage King's explanation, a hint of understanding flashed in Fang Xingjian's gaze. It was true that both the god of universal truth and the 12 evil gods were powerful existences that were far away from this universe. They could also bestow power to the humans of this world across countless space-time distances. By the looks of it, there was not much difference between them. However, more questions arose. The first thing that came to Fang Xingjian's mind was why he was immune to black magic, but not divine arts. However, he did not ask the Black Mage King this question. Instead, he looked at the Black Mage King and asked, "Then what's the purpose of the 13 demonic gods spreading their power and knowledge?" According to the Black Mage King's introduction, they had also unintentionally discovered the space-time area that led to Demonic City. They then interacted with and even cooperated with the Earthlings who had come over. After all, the world's metamorphosis had yet to take place back then, and they were all Tier 1 divine level experts. The ether particles on Earth were insufficient, and there was no diabolic energy descending. Therefore, none of them had gone over. Moreover, to them, Earth would at most only have scientific information that they could refer to and verify with their cultivation. Secondly, Magic Prince warriors could be cultivated extremely quickly and could be used as a form of battle prowess. Moreover, they had also been researching mage-weths, but they had not been able to achieve any results. "You didn't create the mage-weth?" Fang Xingjian was slightly surprised. He had always thought that Magic Prince were a simplified version of black magic that the mages had created for Earth's experts to cultivate quickly. By the looks of it, this did not seem to be the case. The Gold Mage King shook his head. "This matter is also very strange. The path of Magic Prince was imparted by a mutant who suddenly appeared 19 years ago. This person's cultivation was unfathomable, surpassing that of ours by a lot. Now that the world's metamorphosis has happened, for what I can tell, although it wasn't a metamorphosis back then, this person has already far surpassed Tier 1 of the divine level. This person was the one who imparted the 12 types of Magic Prince on Earth. Later on, the path of Magic Prince I researched is of the same lineage as black magic. Although its prowess isn't as great, it's easier for one to cultivate quickly. It was clearly modified from black magic." Hearing the Gold Mage King's explanation, a strange gleam flashed in Fang Xingjian's eyes as he thought, could it be a Magic Prince warrior who attained a breakthrough to the 9-tiered heavens? Or could it be that a mage came to Earth and imparted Magic Prince? He had once gone to other parallel worlds and changed the direction of their history. Since he could go to other parallel worlds, other people could naturally come to their Earth as well. At the thought of this, Feng Xingjian became even more confused about the structure of the two worlds and the heavenly palace system. He felt that there were many layers of mystery hidden within. He had thought that Earth and Miracle World belonged to different periods of time. Even true Lord Qingshan's existence seemed to have verified this point. However, after a rough calculation, he realized that the terrains of the two planets were completely different. Not only were the terrains different, but even their sizes were different. Moreover, there was no starry sky or moon in Miracle Continent, which was different from Earth. After voicing the doubts in his heart, the Gold Mage King nodded and said, "Everyone thinks that the 9 levels of the 9-tiered heavens are just cultivation and dreams. However, we know that it's like traversing space-time and comprehending the profoundness of space-time. All power in the world originated from the changes in time and space. We had also thought that Earth and Miracle World would have a parallel relationship from time to time. However, after careful research, there are many things that seem to be right, but are actually wrong. But I wonder if Grandmaster Fong has heard of the Ring of Obsolescence? Moreover, according to the association's records, there has never been a senior who has entered a parallel world similar to Earth." Feng Xingjian had long since expected this. Other than himself, he had not encountered any divine-level experts who had entered Earth from the 9-tiered heavens. When the divine-level experts in Miracle World cleared the 9-tiered heavens, they had all entered a world similar to Miracle World. Ring of Time? Hearing the term Ring of Time, Feng Xingjian asked puzzledly, "What's that?" The Black Mage King said solemnly, "That's a legend. Based on the Mage Association's legacy, powerful existences who had surpassed the divine level were able to surpass the restraints of time and space. At such an existence, they could only be sealed and imprisoned, but it was extremely difficult to kill them. The Ring of Time was one of the sealing methods. Simply speaking, the structure of the universe was that the past and future of history formed a timeline. The successes and failures at each juncture in history would form a bifurcated timeline. Each parallel world represented a bifurcated timeline. Different choices and different outcomes would lead to different timelines, which was equivalent to forming countless different parallel worlds. When the past and future of the timelines intersected, it would form a ring. For example, a person who had been knocked down by a car, then his parents came to the past to inform him of the time and location of the car accident. Then he would avoid being knocked down by the car, and his parents would not know that he would get into a car accident. They would not come to the past to inform him of the car accident. Therefore, the person in the past would not know that the car accident had happened. Then, the person in the future would be knocked down again, and his parents would go to inform him. Then, after he had avoided it, his parents would not know that he had gotten into a car accident and would not inform him again. Therefore, the person in the past would be knocked down again. Then there would be the endless changes of being knocked down to death, being rescued, and then being knocked down to death. However, this was just an example. The actual situation was 10,000 times more complicated. It was because the past kept on changing the future, and the future kept on changing the past. The timeline became a circle, and the location and direction of the timeline in this circle kept on changing. However, the living beings in this circle would never be able to know about it. Every thought and every action of the people in the Ring of Time would cause their past to change. When the past changed, the person in the present would no longer exist, and the situation would become completely different. Everything in the Ring of Time would sink into an endless cycle without them knowing it. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.